Chapter 1332. Bai Yunfei was caught off guard. He only managed to avoid being hit in the vital parts of his body. His arm was broken, and he was sent flying out of the hall. Everyone was shocked by this unexpected scene. Grand Tutor Yuan's nervous expression was gradually relieved. Then he said sarcastically, "General Shangwan, it seems the outcome has been decided." Shangwan Feiyu looked at Bai Yunfei angrily. If he hadn't been careless, Fu Hongshun, who was seriously injured, wouldn't have been able to win the battle. Now, Grand Tutor Yuan had taken away the opportunity to explore the Devil Realm at the bottom of the ice-sealed river. It would take him at least 100 years to get the sealed information back. Ahem! Fu Hongshun stood up and wiped the blood off his mouth. Then, he said with a victorious smile, "The descendant of a military officer is just so." Shangwan Feiyu didn't want to argue with such a nobody. Although Fu Hongshun had defeated Bai Yunfei with a sneak attack, it was an undeniable fact that Bai Yunfei had been defeated. Fu Hongshun looked at Yongye Wuheng and said, "Prince Wuheng, can you announce the winner of the exploration of the Devil Realm now?" Yongye Wuheng came to himself from the shock caused by the Golden Flame's forbidden wood and said, "There is one more opponent." Fu Hongshun followed Yongye Wuheng's gaze and found Su Yu, who was standing at the edge of the hall. It seemed Shangwan Feiyu had just realized Su Yu's existence. He had pinned all his hopes on Bai Yunfei and the other three people. Su Yu had already been ignored by him. "Su Yu, you could go now." Shangwan Feiyu sighed deeply. He didn't look at Su Yu, but started to think about this matter. Su Yu nodded his head and walked up to Fu Hongshun calmly. Then he said, "If you need treatment, I can wait for you." Huh. What a joke. I'm a dragon. I don't need treatment to deal with a stage for mortal fairy. Fu Hongshun said with a sneer. "Even if I only have one finger left, I can still kill you." However, Fu Hongshun looked at Su Yu and pretended to be generous. "Since you have said that, I will give you a chance. If you surrender, you will be spared from the pain." Su Yu's face was expressionless, and he said regretfully, "I was entrusted by someone, so I'm afraid it's difficult for me to surrender. Since you insist on fighting with your severely injured body, you can make the first move." Hearing that, Fu Hongshun said with a cold smile, "You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Maybe the cultivation of stage 4 mortal fairy has given you too much confidence. Now, let me teach you how powerful you are." What? Fu Hongshun's clothes were fluttering in the wind. His speed was much slower than before. However, it was not something that a 4th realm mortal fairy could react to. A giant fist enveloped Su Yu's head in an instant, and it suddenly came crashing down. Grand Tutor Yuan and the descendants of the other officials didn't care about the result at all, because the result was already decided. The few of them whispered to each other excitedly, as if the Devil region had already fallen into their hands. Grand Tutor Yuan said, "In this trip to the monster realm, you should focus on attacking the Myriad Bone Mountain. Firstly, you should strengthen the seal on the weapon blueprints so that Shangwan Feiyu can't get them again. Secondly, you should excavate the remains of the deities in the Myriad Bone Mountain. According to my speculation, there might be the remains of a deity at the level of an overlord in the galaxy." "Yes, Grand Tutor." The 4 of them answered with excitement in their eyes. When the 5 of them were talking with each other, they felt the atmosphere in the hall had changed. It seemed the whole hall was in silence except for their voices. Grand Tutor Yuan raised his head and saw the horrified onlookers, Shangwan Feiyu, who was pleasantly surprised. The members of the royal family all looked mysterious and unfathomable. Grand Tutor Yuan was surprised. Then, he glanced at the battlefield subconsciously. When he saw what was happening on the battlefield, he was petrified. Then, his pupils contracted bit by bit as he stared at the battlefield. Fu Hongshun was still attacking Su Yu. However, his ferocious body was fixed in place and couldn't move at all. A golden bead had penetrated Fu Hongshun's head through the middle of his eyebrows. Fu Hongshun's soul was severely injured. Then he lost control of his body. After a while, he fell to the ground and passed out on the spot. Grand Tutor Yuan was stunned by the sudden change. It took him a long time to accept the reality. Fu Hongshun was defeated by a 4th realm mortal fairy. Isn't this a little too inconceivable? The other 4 people who were excited were also stunned. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. Fu Hongchun was defeated by a person who was impossible to be defeated. The demonic realm, which was in their mouths, had flown away. When Grand Tutor Yuan came back to his senses, he realized how grave the situation was. His old face became gloomy, and as his eyes flickered, he turned into a remnant shadow and dashed toward Su Yu. How dare you? How dare you use such a cruel method? However, he was knocked back by a cold snort before he arrived at Su Yu. Grand Tutor Yuan, how dare you attack my subordinate in front of me? How arrogant you are! Shangguan Feiyu stood up slowly. His divine strength was surging in his body. Grand Tutor Yuan shouted coldly, General Shangguan, the Empire has its own laws. This was just an ordinary competition. However, Fu Hongchun attacked Fu Hongchun so cruelly. If I don't punish him severely, I will show the strictness of the Empire's laws. If you insist on protecting Fu Hongchun, I will ask the monarch to punish him. Shangguan Feiyu said with a cold smile, Are you blind? Didn't you see the 4 people who were knocked out by your subordinate outside the hall? You want to ask the monarch to punish him? That's exactly what I want. I'd like to see what the Grand Preceptor's intentions are for finding an unknown person to heavily injure the descendants of all the military officials and important officials during the sparring session. At first, Zheng Xiaoyang didn't injure Fu Hongchun severely. In the end, Fu Hongchun stepped forward and attacked Shangguan Feiyu fiercely. He severely injured Shangguan Feiyu's 4 opponents. Obviously, Grand Tutor Yuan was at a disadvantage. Grand Tutor Yuan said through clenched teeth, Don't slander me. I can prove it. Grand Tutor Yuan asked the monarch to punish him. Shangguan Feiyu said coldly. Grand Tutor Yuan snorted as he stood up. Then, he said as he stared at Su Yu thoughtfully, Good. Good. Shangguan Feiyu, you are really good at hiding your strength. It turns out this ordinary young man is the real expert. You are even more cunning than me. His words made Shangguan Feiyu feel guilty. As a military officer, he didn't have many tricks up his sleeves. Su Yu had turned the situation around with a single strike, which was something that he had not expected at all. Su Yu said calmly, Fu Hongchun was severely injured and underestimated me. I just took him by surprise. My strength is just ordinary, so I don't deserve your praise. Hearing this, the onlookers had different reactions. Bai Yunfei and the Imperial Sacred Faction, who knew Su Yu's real strength, didn't believe Su Yu's words. Shangguan Feiyu and Grand Tutor Yuan didn't pay attention to the specific battle. So, they believed Su Yu's words. Anyway, we won. So, we will be responsible for the excavation of the Devil Realm. Shangguan Feiyu said delightedly. Yongya Wuheng let out a sigh of relief and announced the result expressionlessly. The Imperial Sacred Faction was responsible for the excavation of the Saint Realm. The military officers were responsible for the excavation of the Devil Realm. The civil officers were responsible for the excavation of the Mortal Realm. After that, Yongya Wuheng said, Besides the assignment of tasks, I have another piece of news for you. Oh, Shangguan Feiyu and Grand Tutor Yuan were surprised. According to the report of the guards sent by the Imperial Sacred Faction to the ice-sealed river bottom, an unknown force approached the ice-sealed river bottom 10 years ago. Now, some mysterious people are still here. The situation is quite weird. So, please be prepared. Hearing this, the civil officers and the military officers were lost in thought. Yongya Wuheng said as he looked at Bai Yunfei, Where did you get the golden flames forbidden wood? Is it convenient for you to tell us? Bai Yunfei was so nervous that he kept glancing at Su Yu. The 9 golden flames forbidden wood beads were given to him by Su Yu secretly to deal with Fu Hongchun. Seeing this, Yongya Wuheng turned to Su Yu and asked, Are they yours? Su Yu nodded his head. Then he took back the 9 beads. Is it convenient for you to tell us? Su Yu said as he shook his head, Unfortunately, I bought them from a roadside stall by accident. So, I don't know more details about them. Really? What a pity. Yongya Wuheng said with a sigh. Okay, you should go back and prepare yourselves. We will set off in 2 days. The group of people left. Yongye Wuheng's eyes lit up. Then, he said to Yongye Chushua, "It seems that Su Yu is not an ordinary man. The Golden Flame's forbidden wood is related to the whereabouts of the Kailan Divine Warrior. However, he didn't tell us about it. The Kailan Divine Warrior was the only one among the 9 Divine Warriors whose corpse was missing. This meant he had inherited the inheritance of a Divine Warrior." Yongye Chushua said with a naughty smile, "This is also the reason why I chose him. He has the blood of the World Annihilation Emperor, the heaven-defying Divine Warrior, as the Divine Laksana, and the whereabouts of the Kailan Divine Warrior. The 3 Divine Warriors are intertwined with each other. He's a man with great luck. Maybe I will get some unexpected gains in the Lost Nation." Yongye Wuheng said as he nodded his head, "I hope so. The Empire is full of internal and external troubles. I have a bad feeling about the appearance of the 9 Emperor tablet." His murmur echoed in the silent palace. After returning to the Shangwan mansion, Bai Yunfei said gratefully, "Brother Su, thanks to you, we could defeat Grand Tutor Yuan's plot. This is a small gift from us." Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang, who had recovered, were grateful and fawning over Su Yu. They gave him a palm-sized puppet. At first glance, Su Yu found it quite familiar, as if he had seen it before. Seeing Su Yu was confused, Bai Yunfei said with a smile, "This is the forbidden weapon of the Imperial Guards, the giant divine soldier. It is a deity-level puppet made by the civilization of the ancient god realm. Its combat power is equal to that of a deity. Brother Su, you can use this thing to save your life if you are in danger in the devil realm. However, Brother Su, you must not be discovered by Grand Tutor Yuan's people when you use this thing. This is a forbidden weapon, and no one except the Imperial Guards is allowed to use it. Once it is discovered by Grand Tutor Yuan's people, you will be in big trouble." The giant divine soldier? Su Yu suddenly remembered that Wang Zixuan of the Great Eastern Alliance had found an incomplete ancient blueprint and used it to make a puppet at the level of an early-stage prospective deity. No wonder it looked so familiar. They were the same thing. The difference was that the blueprint of the ancient god realm was complete, and it could make a deity-level puppet. Su Yu's eyes lit up as he asked, "Do you have the blueprint of this thing?" Bai Yunfei said as he nodded his head, "Yes. All the blueprints of the ancient weapons were sealed in the ice-sealed river bottom by Grand Tutor Yuan for protection. This time, we're going to take out all the blueprints." Hearing that, Su Yu was overjoyed. If they could make a large number of deity-level puppets, the gap between the realm of demons and the Eastern Alliance would be overtaken easily. Chapter 1333. Seeing that Su Yu had accepted the puppet, Bai Yunfei and the other 3 left with smiles on their faces. Please search to see the full list. The novel of the day. Just as Su Yu was studying it carefully, a hearty laughter came from outside the house. "Hee hee, it seems like you've already gotten a good reward." Su Yu shuddered and went out to greet him. "Greetings, Commander Shangwan." Shangwan Feiyu was in good spirits. He waved his hand and said with a smile, "No need to greet me." As he spoke, he looked Su Yu up and down, then chuckled and said, "Even I didn't expect that the trip to the Devil Realm would depend on you. Otherwise, I would have fallen into that old man's trap." Su Yu replied modestly, "It was just a fluke. If I were to try again, I might not be able to succeed." "Hey, you don't have to be so modest. This is all thanks to you. No one could deny it." As Shangwan Feiyu said this, he took out an icy blue soft armor made of strange fish scales from his bosom and said, "This is a defensive soft armor given to me by the monarch when I was fighting in the north and the south. It's called the Ice Blue Godly Armor. In terms of material, it's equivalent to the top-notch defense of a tribe leader. If you activate it, very few people in the Imperial City can activate it. I am a fair person. Since you have made a great contribution, you should be rewarded." Shangwan Feiyu threw the armor to Su Yu. "It's yours now." Su Yu took it and touched it. Immediately, he sensed that the material was extraordinary. It could resist a strike of a tribe leader. If he could instill divine energy into it, it could resist the powerful attacks of Dakini and Alliance Master Luo. For Su Yu, who lacked defensive treasures, it was a rare treasure. "Thank you, Commander." Su Yu accepted it naturally. His eyes flickered as he asked, "Commander, did you come here today for another matter?" Shangguan Feiyu replied with a smile, "Of course. The trip to the frozen river bottom is about to begin. It's time for us to officially hand over the deal." Nodding his head, Su Yu took out a jade bottle that contained 2 drops of the World Annihilation Emperor's blood. Shangguan Feiyu's eyes lit up with eagerness. Su Yu threw it to Shangguan Feiyu and said, "Commander, I hope you can keep your promise." Shangguan Feiyu grabbed the divine blood and said with a smile, "I always keep my promise. You can go to the ice-sealed river bottom as you wish. However, it depends on Bai Yunfei and the others whether you can find the map you want." After Su Yu left, the joy on Shangguan Feiyu's face was replaced by solemnity. He said, "Is there any reply from Elder Chiu?" The attendant beside him said, "No news yet." At this moment, a hasty aura descended upon the mansion and landed in front of Shangguan Feiyu. That aged face, who else could it be but the old man guarding the heaven-fighting 3 styles? However, at this moment, only his divine soul was left. His physical body had been shattered, and his god source origin had strangely dried up. "Elder Chiu, your injury." Shangguan Feiyu was surprised. He helped Elder Chiu up and started to treat his injury. Chiu Lai was sent by Shangguan Feiyu to investigate the origins of the World Annihilation Emperor's divine blood in Su Yu's hands. Unexpectedly, he returned with severe injuries in just 2 or 3 days. Flying rain, something bad has happened. A large-scale war has broken out in the southern region. Elder Chiu spat out a mouthful of black blood and said anxiously. Shangguan Feiyu was shocked. "What? A war? Who was the one who injured you?" "Among the 99 tribes, which tribe leader could injure you? Also, were the strong men who went with you?" Shangguan Feiyu was shocked by the series of anxious questions. "It was the Mermaid Emperor. He severely injured me within 3 moves. If it weren't for the guards who covered my retreat, I wouldn't have been able to escape. Undoubtedly, those guards who covered his retreat have been wiped out." Shangguan Feiyu raised his eyebrows. "The Mermaid Emperor? How could it severely injure you within 3 moves?" Elder Chiu's face turned pale. He said in a low voice, "It must have been possessed by a powerful creature." After thinking for a while, Shangguan Feiyu gave him a drop of spiritual liquid. "Heal your injury first." Elder Chiu swallowed the spiritual liquid. With the help of his divine strength, he stabilized his disintegrating divine soul. He said, "The southern region is in turmoil. More than half of the 99 tribes have fallen into the enemy's hands and become the subordinates of the Mermaid tribe. If they hadn't attacked me when I was in the Yiksha tribe, we wouldn't have known that the southern region is in such turmoil." Shangguan Feiyu was a little surprised. More than half of the tribes have fallen into the enemy's hands. How fast? It was peaceful several months ago. Who is this possessed Mermaid Emperor? After thinking for a while, Shangguan Feiyu said seriously, "No matter what, as a military officer, I have to punish the tribes in person for their rebellion." In addition, Shangguan Feiyu said, "Do you have any information about the source of the World Annihilation Emperor's divine blood?" Elder Chiu said hesitantly, "Yes, but I suggest you stop investigating it. It will be very dangerous for you." There were not many things that could put Shangguan Feiyu, the #1 military officer of the empire, in danger. "Oh." Shangguan Feiyu looked around vigilantly. He said, "Just tell me." Elder Chiu said very cautiously, "Grand Supreme, he is the mastermind behind this." Shangguan Feiyu's pupils constricted gradually. After a long while, he took a deep breath and said, "So, Su Yu's divine blood he was the one who snatched it." Elder Chiu said helplessly, "I think that kid is not bad. It's a pity that he offended such a person. Nobody in the empire can save him." Shangguan Feiyu was stunned a bit. Then he sighed, "Alas, it's a pity. If the Grand Supreme wants to kill him, nobody can save him. Ask Bai Yunfei and the others to keep a distance from him in case they are accidentally hurt." Shangguan Feiyu sighed helplessly. Then he disappeared. 2 days later, the 5 people from the Imperial Sacred Faction, the 5 descendants of military officers and the 5 descendants of civil officers arrived in front of the imperial palace. The descendants of the military officials and the descendants of the civil officials were hostile to each other, and they were as incompatible as fire and water. "Suyu, I will remember you," Fu Hongchan said as he stared at Suyu with hatred in his eyes. He also felt he was defeated unjustly. If he was in his prime, he wouldn't have been defeated by a stage for mortal fairy. Suyu shrugged his shoulders indifferently as he stared at the 5 people from the imperial sacred faction. 3 deities and 2 later-stage prospective deities were powerful. This time, the imperial sacred faction had made a great effort to excavate the creation-level civilization weapon in the Saint Realm. The 5 of them were probably the most outstanding young cultivators in the past 100 years. If they were killed in the ice-sealed river bottom, the imperial sacred faction couldn't afford the consequences. What exactly was that creator-level civilization weapon? So he was quite curious. "If you have nothing else to do, let's go. We will meet in the Shuimon building of the Shui Nation in the North Territory before the ice-sealed river is unfrozen," Yongye Wuheng said. The 3 deities from the imperial sacred faction were the fastest. They wanted to go to the ice-sealed river first to make preparations. The Shuimon building of the Shui Nation in the North Territory was the closest force to the ice-sealed river. After saying that, Yongye Wuheng and his team set off first. Then, Grand Tutor Yuan and his team left at the same time. Bai Yunfei and the other 4 people left last. Bai Yunfei said apologetically, "Brother Su, we have to go to the Wuji Celestial Mountain on our way. I'm afraid we can't go with you." Suyu said calmly, "You can make your own arrangements. I can go alone." "Okay, Brother Su, take care," Bai Yunfei and the other 4 people said. Then, they flew to the ice-sealed river in a strange aircraft. Suyu was lost in thought on the spot. Before this, Bai Yunfei and the other 3 people flattered Suyu a lot. However, when they were about to go with him, they left Suyu alone. Suyu was a smart man. How could he not see that? "Okay, it will be more convenient for me to go alone," Suyu said to himself. Then, he turned into a gust of wind and disappeared. After he left, several strange black-robed figures appeared soundlessly at the place where he had just stood. One of them grabbed a wisp of Suyu's remaining aura and sniffed it lightly. Then, he locked on to Suyu's direction and curled his lips into a mocking smile. "I haven't played the hunter game for a long time. Ha! Ha!" 1 month later, Suyu left the imperial city and arrived at the border of the Shui Nation in the North Territory. The Shui Nation in the North Territory was a country in name. Actually, it was an affiliated force of the empire. The Shui-style tribe had helped the Eternal Darkness Imperial Sacred Faction to conquer the world of the World Annihilation Imperial Sacred Faction. Because of their great contribution, the Eternal Darkness Imperial Sacred Faction gave the Shui-style tribe the icy North Territory as their fief. That was the origin of the Shui Nation in the North Territory. It was snowing all year round in the Shui Nation. The climate was cold all year round. The chilly air contained a special power that could even affect deities. As soon as Suyu stepped into the territory of the Shui Nation, he felt chilly and slowed down a lot. Duh. Walking in a snowy wasteland, Suyu suddenly heard the sound of water flowing from afar. He looked into the distance and found many strange creatures in the water that looked like horses were running in the wasteland. There were no less than 7 or 8 transparent icemen riding on top of the creature. They were chasing after a little critter that was fleeing in panic with all their might. "Are they hunters?" Suyu murmured. A group of hunters galloped past Suyu expressionlessly. The splashing snowflakes blotted out the sky and blocked Suyu's sight. Suyu gently raised his arm, stretched out 2 fingers, and pinched the snowflakes in the air. Between his fingers, there was an arrow that was as dark as ink. "After following me for so long, you finally made your move." Suyu flicked his fingers and threw away the arrow. He slowly raised his deep, cold eyes and looked at the other side of the wind and snow. In the wind and snow, a vague figure walked slowly. He was tall and straight, carrying a heavy giant bough on his back. He walked towards Suyu step by step and said calmly through the wind and snow, "What a strong sense of perception. I took advantage of the right time and place to shoot an arrow, but you still found it easily and caught it. The wind and snow were right time. The chilly air of the Xue Nation and the North Territory affected Su Yu's flexibility because of the geographical advantage. He had been tracking Su Yu for a month and did not make his move until he seized the perfect opportunity. Unfortunately, he was still found by Su Yu. Su Yu turned his head and looked at him quietly. His soul strength was comparable to that of a deity. Otherwise, he might not have found this arrow. No wonder. Su Yu thought of the reason why Bai Yunfei and the others kept a distance from him. Perhaps Shangwan Feiyu knew some dangerous people were following Su Yu. The man walked to 1,000 feet away and stood still. It was a strange man with 4 eyes. Each of his eyes was extremely sharp. 4 eyes, golden bow, good at tracking. You are the bloodline of the arrow slave of the world annihilation imperial sacred faction. Su Yu said slowly, "It is said that your bloodline has disappeared along with the destruction of the world annihilation imperial sacred faction. I didn't expect there is still one of you. It seems the one who ordered you to kill me is not an ordinary person." In the imperial city, Su Yu had learned about the details of the empire many times and learned some information about the world annihilation imperial sacred faction. Among them was information about the arrow slave. The arrow slave was a slave of the world annihilation imperial sacred faction. He was born to be good at archery. His archery skills were the best in the entire era. Even the 9 emperors didn't dare to compete with the arrow slave in archery. It was said that the chief of the arrow slave once shot an arrow through hundreds of millions of miles of mountains and rivers and killed the declining faction master of the imperial sacred faction. Even an ordinary arrow slave could be extremely lethal with a bow and arrow in their hands. An arrow slave at the level of an ordinary deity could easily kill a tribe leader. In the era of the World Annihilation Empire, the existence of the arrow slave was like a sharp sword hanging over the heads of many deities. No one knew whether they would be killed by the arrows of the arrow slave from far away. The fear of the arrow slave had been recorded in many historical records. Therefore, after the fall of the World Annihilation Empire, the bloodline of the arrow slave was also slaughtered by the World Annihilation Imperial family. Su Yu didn't expect that there were still alive arrow slaves who were sent to kill Su Yu. You don't need to mention the name of the past anymore. You just need to know that today, I am here to kill you. The arrow slave stood still. Su Yu said lightly, "It depends on whether you have the ability to do so." As he said that, Su Yu suddenly waved his left palm in the air. A red space energy wrapped the arrow on the ground and teleported it away. When it reappeared, it was a snowy mountain tens of thousands of feet away. The arrow bombarded the back of the snowy mountain. With a sudden explosion, it burst out with destructive power and blew up the ancient snowy mountain. Along with an angry roar, several figures appeared behind the collapsed snowy mountain. The roar was very familiar. It was the Yiksha king who was surrounded by demonic energy. As for the other 2, they were strange deities. However, their auras were extremely strong, not weaker than the Yiksha king at all. One of them was surrounded by thunderbolts, while the other was covered by dense black flames. They were both exuding a dangerous aura. Together with the arrow slave, there were a total of 4 killers at the level of the tribe leader. The arrow slave slightly stared at Su Yu and said, "Oh, how did you know that arrow was not ordinary? How did you find out about the hidden killer?" Su Yu said lightly, "Isn't it simple? As the descendant of the arrow slave, it is hard to believe that the arrow you shot was the arrow of the legendary arrow slave. Therefore, there must be something special about this arrow. As for the 3 of them, you are a killer who can attack from a distance, but you deliberately stayed close to me. Didn't you want to attract my attention so that they could hide?" Hearing that, the arrow slave grinned and said in a creepy tone, "I haven't met such an interesting prey for a long time. However, you don't know one thing. The 4 eyes of the arrow slave burst out a cruel arc. That is, the arrow I shot just now was more than one." Suddenly, Su Yu's heart trembled. A sense of crisis suddenly struck him. Chapter 1334. Su Yu's body was covered with a dreamy blue luster. Right at that moment, a pitch-black arrow shot out from behind Suyu abruptly and hit him in the back. The boundless force, which was wrapped in strong poison, pierced through Suyu's clothes and went straight into his back. This arrow, which had appeared out of nowhere and possessed boundless power, was far more powerful than the previous arrow, and it gave Suyu a fatal blow. The arrow slave said with a sarcastic smile, "Rest in peace." The archery of the arrow slave is divided into the dark arrow and the open arrow. What you blocked was the open arrow. The open arrow is used to attract the enemy's attention. The dark arrow is the real killer move. Just now, he shot 2 arrows at the same time. The open arrow was caught by Suyu easily. However, the dark arrow was shot over Suyu's head silently. At this moment, it suddenly changed direction and gave Suyu an unexpected fatal blow. This amazing arrow was created by a series of confusing means. There was a reason why the arrow slave was so feared in the era of the World Annihilation Emperor. His archery was really terrifying. However, this arrow didn't pierce through Suyu's body as the arrow slave had expected. Even the great force of the arrow didn't knock Suyu's body away. Instead, with a soft sound, the arrow seemed to hit something. Then, Suyu's body was covered with a dreamy blue luster. A black arrow with a ferocious, sharp beak fell from Suyu's back and fell to the ground. Suyu said with a faint smile, "It seems that your archery is not as good as the rumors say." Although he looked calm, he was very vigilant. This time it was his back. At this critical moment, the ice blue divine armor protected him from the fatal blow. What if it was aimed at his head? In terms of threat, this arrow slave was really terrifying. The arrow slave deserved his reputation. The 4 eyes of the arrow slave were shining brightly. The ice blue divine armor? Shangguan Feiyu is really generous. Yiksha King, you guys attack. I will watch from the side and find a chance to attack. The arrow slave slowly stepped back. The Yiksha King and the other 2 deities stood in the front line. This man is sinister, cunning, and full of tricks. There's no need to waste your breath on him. Let's capture him first, then interrogate him for the whereabouts of the descendants of the World Annihilation Emperor. The Yiksha King bellowed. Demonic energy flickered all over his body, and he turned into a flash of lightning that instantly approached within 100 feet of Suyu. Extinguish thoughts. The Yiksha King's eyes surged with extremely dense devil chi. At such a close distance, his eyes suddenly shot out 2 rays of black light that seemed almost solid. Suyu furrowed his brows. How could he be careless when facing the attack of a tribe leader? With a thought, the water element on the surface of his body surged, and his body moved 1,000 feet horizontally. The pitch-black light brushed past Suyu's fragmentary shadow. There was a weak aura left in the water, which made Suyu feel dizzy. Suyu was shocked. This was only the remnant aura. If he was hit by the 2 black lights, wouldn't he become dizzy and unable to extricate himself? Being besieged by 4 powerful tribe kings, a moment of dizziness was enough for him to die 100 times. Just as he was feeling shocked, the Yiksha King once again dashed over like a bolt of lightning and used the strange faith-extinguishing technique at close range. However, this time, just as he was about to approach, he shook his sleeve and suddenly shook out a large number of small golden balls. All of them were thumb-sized, and there were 99 of them. The sphere's appearance was extremely abrupt, and it revolved around Suyu at a high speed all of a sudden. With Suyu as the center, it formed a golden storm. Bang! Bang! The Yiksha King, who was trapped in the golden storm, was pierced by the golden flames forbidden wood beads one after another. In the blink of an eye, his body was riddled with thousands of holes. Groaning in pain, the demonic energy in the Yiksha King's body surged, forcibly resisting the golden flames forbidden wood beads around him. Then, he immediately retreated from the golden storm. The 2 tribe king deities, surrounded by thunderbolts and black flames, rushed over side by side to protect the Yiksha King. Looking at the Yiksha King's body, the relaxed look on their faces disappeared. There were thousands of thumb-sized holes all over the Yiksha King's body. Not a single inch of his body was intact. A large amount of divine blood flowed out of the holes. The two of them were secretly shocked. If the Yiksha King's reaction had been a little slower, he would have been killed by the golden flames forbidden with beads. The Yiksha King stared at the golden storm with a gloomy look on his face. "Don't you only have 9? How could you have so many?" The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener knew it. Very few people knew that Suyu had 9 golden flames forbidden with beads. The Yiksha King actually knew about it. The big shot behind him was so powerful that it was beyond imagination. After defeating the Yiksha King, Suyu wrapped himself in the golden storm. At the same time, the power of water surged, condensing into a boundless undercurrent around him, pushing him away quickly. Trying to run away? As soon as he moved, the deity surrounded by thunderbolts suddenly shot out dazzling thunderbolts from his eyes. The thunderbolts almost teleported, bombarding the golden storm in the blink of an eye. With a dull sound, the golden storm, which was spinning at a high speed, was disturbed by a tyrannical external force and fell into disorder. The golden balls of the golden flames forbidden would scattered in all directions. However, under Suyu's control, most of them went in the direction of the Yiksha King and the others. What was even more amazing was that with the help of his attack, the scattered golden flames forbidden with beads became even faster and more terrifying. "Oh no, he has been tricked. He is using your attack." The Yiksha King had fought with Suyu before, so he immediately understood Suyu's intention. Suyu had no intention of running away. Burning the sky and boiling the sea, the deity, who was covered in black flames, opened his mouth and spat out a sky full of raging flames, which transformed into a 10,000-foot-tall flaming giant. He put his hands together and grasped the incoming beads. However, right at that moment, an extremely sharp blade, which could cut through everything in the world, suddenly attacked. It was aimed at the Yiksha King. The Yiksha King's pupils constricted. He saw a golden arrow burning with golden flames coming straight at him at an extremely fast speed. Without thinking, the Yiksha King shouted and took out a defensive treasure that was a replica of an Emperor-based saint artifact. It was a snow-white leaf. Leaf of heavenly India. The snow-white leaf immediately multiplied into hundreds of pieces, which rotated to form a shield in front of the Yiksha King. Poof! However, what made the Yiksha King gasp was that the hundreds of white leaves were instantly pierced through by the arrow. This was a replica of an Emperor-based saint artifact. If he had known that a round ball could easily break through an Emperor-based saint artifact, then the arrow of the golden flames forbidden would be even sharper and indestructible. At that critical moment, the deity, who was covered in black flames, shouted in a low voice. The 10,000-foot-tall, flaming giant roared and rushed over, blocking the arrow with its palms. Poof! With another dull sound, the flaming giant was pierced through. The deity, who was covered in black flames, groaned, and blood trickled down from the corner of his mouth. The deity, who was surrounded by thunder and lightning, was shocked. He immediately condensed a large amount of thunder and lightning, which weaved into a thunder net, in an attempt to stop the arrow. However, a thunderous explosion resounded, and the thunder net was mercilessly broken. The golden arrow went straight for the Yiksha King without any hesitation. The 3 tribe leaders couldn't stop the sharpness of the golden arrow at all. The Yiksha King was horrified. He had an illusion that death was coming. However, right at that moment, a cold laugh came from behind them. "With me here, do you think you can kill them?" Swoosh! 2 black arrows, one in the light and one in the dark, shot towards them unpredictably. The arrow in the light was in front, and the arrow in the dark was behind. The 2 arrows collided with the tip of the golden arrow in the void. The golden flames forbidden wood was indestructible. The arrow in the light was split in half from the arrowhead. However, the arrow in the dark took advantage of the situation. The ferocious arrowhead burst out with amazing explosive power, producing a strong shock wave that forcibly changed the trajectory of the golden flames forbidden wood. With a swoosh, the golden flames forbidden wood deviated from its original direction. It brushed past the Yiksha King's head, shot through the snowy mountain behind him, and went straight into the sky. The Yiksha king broke out in a cold sweat after having just escaped from the gates of hell. After the fear, the Yiksha king's desire to kill became stronger. He had to kill this man. However, before he could calm down from the lingering fear, the Yiksha king suddenly felt that he was locked on by an even more terrible crisis. Looking up, he saw an ancient-looking cannon with cracks all over it. He didn't know when Suyu had taken it out, but it was aimed directly at him. Suyu had taken out a jar of divine blood and was pouring it into the cannon. The cannon seemed to have been nourished, and a destructive power was brewing in the barrel of the cannon. One look at it made the Yiksha king shiver. The Annihilation Cannon. One of the reasons why the 4 tribe leaders attacked a mere stage for mortal fairy at the same time was because of this terrible Annihilation Cannon. It could destroy a tribe leader with a single shot. If they had defended with all their strength, they might have been able to resist it. However, among the 4 of them, the Yiksha king's defensive treasure had been destroyed, and the magical powers of the Black Flame Immortal and the Thunderbolt Immortal had just been broken. They couldn't defend for a second time in such a short time. Even the arrow slave, who was the most powerful person in this battle, had just shot 2 arrows. The timing of the Annihilation Cannon's appearance was so exquisite that it made people despair. Thinking back to Suyu's actions, he had first distracted them with a round bead, then used the powerful arrows to make them defend with all their strength, and then destroyed their defenses one by one. In the end, he had chosen this delicate moment to use the most terrible Annihilation Cannon. Seeing through Suyu's intentions, everyone present gasped. Under such a dangerous situation, Suyu was still able to advance step by step in an orderly manner and force them into a desperate situation. Such a calm and almost cold-blooded temperament caused them to suddenly feel a sense of fear. Boom! The Annihilation Cannon was finally launched. A mass of purple light shot out from the cannon, leaving a long residual shadow on the white snowfield, and headed straight for the Yiksha king. Run! The Black Flame Immortal and the Thunderbolt Immortal were terrified. They didn't dare to touch the Annihilation Cannon, which had been passed down from the ancient civilization of the God Realm. The cannon was aimed at the Yiksha king. They couldn't resist it, and they didn't want to die for the Yiksha king. In the distance, the arrow slave's face was also gloomy. He had just shot 2 arrows with the longbow in his hand to block the attack of the Annihilation Cannon. However, the purple light from the Annihilation Cannon was not damaged at all. It pierced through the mountains and rivers and shot toward the Yiksha king in an unstoppable manner. The Yiksha king was sweating profusely. He flew into the sky in terror, trying to escape. However, the cold purple light mercilessly destroyed it in midair, not even leaving a scrap behind. The remaining purple light broke through the water and went straight to the end of the endless water. The horrible destructive power still remained in the air, which was very frightening. Crack! After the attack, the Annihilation Cannon in front of Suyu finally couldn't bear it anymore. The cracks on its surface expanded, and the whole cannon broke into countless pieces. A tribe king was destroyed by the cannon in such an unstoppable way. The power of the cannon shocked Suyu greatly. The only pity was that the Annihilation Cannon had been lost for a long time and couldn't be replicated. Chapter 1335. The 2 deities also felt that this was a tricky situation. The Yiksha king, who was at the level of a tribe leader, was killed so easily. If they were careless, they would end up the same way. Heavenly thunder and earthly fire. The 2 deities looked at each other and performed their divine paths together. One was the Thunderbolt divine path, and the other was the Black Fire divine path. 2 gods appeared in the sky, one in the south and the other in the north. They looked at Suyu from a distance and sandwiched him in the middle. One was covered with roaring thunder, and the other was covered with black fire. The Thunderbolt virtual shadow raised his left hand. Dark clouds rolled in the sky, and thunderbolts that were hundreds of feet thick kept rumbling. The Black Fire figure waved his right hand, and the earth suddenly cracked. Black flames that could burn everything were burning fiercely. Above his head was the terrible thunder, and under his feet was the black flame similar to the disastrous fire. After the combination of the two, an inexplicable destructive power was produced. wisps of pitch-black mist that could be seen with the naked eye were born in this world out of thin air. Suyu grabbed with both hands and took back the 99 scattered golden flames forbidden with beads. He scattered them to protect himself 1,000 feet away. When one of the beads touched the black mist, an amazing scene appeared. The golden flames forbidden with bead was melted. Suyu's pupils shrank slightly. The hardness of the golden flames forbidden with bead was melted. Their divine paths were not weak. After the combination, the black mist that was produced was even more terrible. The thunder and fire divine paths are fused. Boy, you must be surprised. Only one deity can fuse their divine paths with each other among tens of thousands of deities. In order to ensure that you can be killed, my lord has put in a lot of effort. The arrow slave said with a hideous smile. Suddenly, he loosened his fingers and took out the golden bow hidden on his back. He shot 2 arrows that had been prepared for a long time. Suyu hurriedly dodged the arrows. The bright arrow exploded, while the dark arrow disappeared and hid in the dark, ready to attack Suyu at any time. However, the arrow slaves didn't stop. They kept shooting arrows in the light and in the dark. Suyu only had the strength to defend himself, but had no time to escape or stop them. I will suppress this man. You are responsible for fusing the divine paths. The arrow slave easily suppressed Suyu from a distance. He smiled playfully. I haven't met such an interesting prey for a long time. Not only was he smart, but he could also kill the hunter. This was challenging. Suyu frowned secretly. The arrow slave was really tricky. Seeing the divine paths of the 2 deities fuse together, the black fog between heaven and earth became extremely dense and almost everywhere. While Suyu was dodging the arrows, he still had to be wary of the black fog. No, if this went on, he would definitely die. Suyu's heart sank. As he stared at the fog that filled the sky, the figure of an icy woman appeared behind him. Omnidirectional destruction. Suyu bellowed, and the icy woman behind him spat out a mouthful of cold air. Wherever the cold air passed, the world froze into ice. The black mist froze as well. Seizing this opportunity, a transparent figure appeared behind Suyu again. It was the divine path of concealment and camouflage that he had learned by force. Conceal! With a light shout, Suyu's whole body turned transparent and disappeared from his original spot. At the same time, under the effect of the chain of rules, Suyu's aura disappeared without a trace. Arrow Slave's fingers paused. He looked around and sneered. Interesting. It was getting more and more interesting. Even a tribe leader might not be able to do such a brilliant concealment technique. Today, I really met a very interesting prey. However, it is too optimistic to think that you can get rid of me in such a way. Arrow Slave pointed his bow, an arrow to the sky, and sneered. Heavenly flower shower. 2 black arrows, one bright and one dark, were shot into the sky. Then they exploded in the air at the same time and turned into fragments. Those fragments burned by themselves and fell down to the ground like sparks, covering a large area. The sparks were so dense that nothing could hide in the area covered by them. When they fell somewhere, one of the sparks seemed to hit something in the air and suddenly bounced off. Arrow Slave's eyes were sharp, so he found it immediately and shot an arrow at it without thinking. With a muffled groan, a transparent figure shook for a moment and was shaken out of the void. It was Suyu. At this time, the divine path of the 2 deities finally reached the upper realm. Raging thunder and fire. The sky thunder exploded and the earth fire soared into the sky. 2 forces from the sky and the earth hit the world at the same time. Under the impact of the 2 powerful forces, the black mist in the world suddenly surged violently like a raging river, rushing in all directions. Whatever it touched, it turned into nothingness. The beads of the golden flames forbidden wood were no exception. Suyu's face was gloomy. Being in the black mist all over the sky, he suddenly felt a sense of crisis. With a low shout, he recalled the beads of the golden flames forbidden wood in the sky. Without thinking, Suyu retreated from this area before the black mist completely became violent. However, as soon as he moved his feet, A hidden arrow suddenly shot out at this time, blocking Suyu's steps. Suyu had to slow down and carefully avoid the entanglement. He managed to avoid being hit in the vital parts and blocked it with the ice blue divine armor. However, the two arrows of the arrow slave shot at him again. The bright arrow suddenly exploded when it was 100 feet away from Suyu. The strong shock wave stirred the black mist even more violently. Suyu didn't notice it and was sprayed on his chest by a mass of black mist. In an instant, his chest turned into powder. The arrow slave in the distance smiled as if he had killed his prey, but the next moment his smile suddenly froze. With Suyu at the center, a jade-green halo appeared within 1,000 feet, encircling him within it. His destroyed chest was restored in an instant. Moreover, no matter how the black mist destroyed him, he recovered immediately. What is this thing? The divine path? The arrow slave was stunned and then smiled coldly. Let's see how long you can hold on. As he said that, he backhanded 2 arrows. Suyu's eyes were filled with killing intent, but he had no time to care about him. If he didn't escape from this place before the undead realm ended, no matter how strong his body was, he couldn't be stronger than the golden flames forbidden wood. Ignoring the 2 arrows that had pierced through his body, Suyu sped away from the world at lightning speed. Chase him. That realm should have a time limit. Hold on, don't let him escape. The black flame immortal sneered. Don't worry, since the creation of our divine path, no one has ever escaped from it. Even a level 5 deity would lose a layer of skin if he didn't die, let alone him. For people in 2 groups, one chasing and the other chasing. Suyu used all his strength to leave this place quickly. 10 minutes passed in a flash. Suyu arrived at the edge of this place. The black mist here was extremely thin, so the threat was greatly reduced. It was also at this moment that Suyu's life realm was lifted. Taking a light breath, Suyu took a step forward. However, at this moment, the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal shouted at the same time, "Explode!" Suddenly, the thunder in the sky and the flames on the ground exploded at the same time. The resulting explosive power completely destroyed a part of the world. The terrible impact swept the black mist between the sky and the earth away crazily. The range of the radiation was 10 times larger than this place. Unless the strength of a level 5 deity, there was no chance of escaping. In front of the magnificent black mist that swept across the sky, Suyu was swallowed up like an ant in an instant. The arrow slave, the Thunderbolt Immortal, and the Black Flame Immortal, who were watching this scene from afar, heaved a long sigh of relief. Humph! Humph! No one has ever escaped alive under the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal said proudly. The arrow slave smiled regretfully. It's a pity that I haven't encountered such a prey for a long time. After saying that, the arrow slave waited for the black mist to dissipate. Then, he walked to the place where Suyu was swallowed up and looked around. Let's search together. His storage space should not have been destroyed. Most likely, it was left nearby. The Black Flame Immortal and the Thunderbolt Immortal also came over and looked around. Killing Suyu was their second task. Taking back the descendant of the World Annihilation Emperor was their most important task. However, at this moment, the Black Flame Immortal suddenly screamed. A golden long sword appeared abruptly and pierced through his head. The Thunderbolt Immortal's face changed greatly. With a roar, the fierce power of thunder washed the area within 1,000 feet of the Black Flame Immortal crazily. In the void, a dull groan came out. The voice was so familiar. Who else could it be if it was not Suyu who they thought had killed? Oh no, he is not dead. The arrow slave was shocked. Then, he shouted and stepped back first. As a quick-witted person, he immediately realized that the 3 of them had been fooled. Suyu was not dead. Instead, he had hidden himself to make the 3 of them lower their guard. However, as soon as he stepped back, the arrow slave's face changed abruptly. Wait, don't scatter. You are quite quick to react. At this moment, a cold voice came into the arrow slave's ears. Another golden long sword flashed out of the void and pierced through the arrow slave's heart without any warning. With a puff, the arrow slave's heart was pierced through in an instant. He was Su Yu's real target. The threat of this man was far greater than the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal. The purpose of attacking the Black Flame Immortal was to make them panic and scatter so that it would be easier for him to kill the arrow slave. Otherwise, if the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal stopped him, it would be very difficult for Su Yu to kill the arrow slave. As expected, the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal had no time to rescue the arrow slave. They could only watch the golden sword piercing through the arrow slave's heart. Strangely, the Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal did not show much anger. Instead, they attacked the arrow slave together. Even the ice blue divine armor could not withstand the joint attack of the two of them. The enormous force shook Su Yu away and revealed his figure. There was blood at the corner of Su Yu's mouth. His face was slightly pale and showed signs of weakness. The moment the black fog erupted, Su Yu used the resurrection technique and hid himself amidst the chaotic aura. He had just suffered a blow from the Thunderbolt Immortal. Now, the two of them had joined forces to injure Su Yu. However, it was not a loss for him to suffer some injuries after killing the arrow slave. However, Su Yu suddenly found that the body of the arrow slave, whose heart was pierced through, was slowly turning around. A ferocious and vicious smile appeared on the arrow slave's face. Good, good. You are the first one who almost killed my prey. When he turned around, Su Yu was shocked. There was no blood flowing out of his broken chest. Instead, it was filled with metallic materials. Su Yu opened his soul eyes and saw through the arrow slave's body. His pupils shrank. This body, in his soul eyes, the arrow slave did not have a body at all. It was just a machine made of metal. However, the soul of the arrow slave was attached to the machine. Ha 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 ha. You found me. I am an artificial creature from the civilization of the ancient god realm. As long as my soul is still here, I can change my body at will. The arrow slave laughed hideously. Then he raised his golden bow and said mockingly, I admire your quick-wittedness. Unfortunately, this is the end of it. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal's eyes lit up. Then they took a deep breath. Suddenly, the atmosphere around them was stirred up and gathered around them. At the same time, the black mist also gathered around them. Chapter 1336. In just an instant, this part of the world was once again filled with that terrifying black mist. Please search to see the full list. The novel of the day. Su Yu had already used the domain of life and the resurrection of the dead in succession, so he couldn't bear the attack of the black fog again. You have nowhere to go. The arrow slave loosened his fingers and used the same trick to entangle Su Yu with two arrows. Su Yu took a deep look at the three of them, while a 30-feet-long pair of black and white wings rose from his back and formed a yin-yang tai chi symbol above his head. With a flap of his wings, heaven and earth were overturned, and yin and yang were reversed. In the next breath, Su Yu disappeared from his original spot. The two arrows shot by the arrow slave only penetrated a shadow. The supreme treasure of the Tai Ching Emperor, the Tai Chi yin-yang wings. The arrow slave gasped in shock. The Thunderbolt Immortal and the Black Flame Immortal were also shocked. How could the treasure of the Tai Ching Emperor fall into his hands? Even so, how did he activate it? Such a top-notch Emperor-based saint weapon must be powered by divine energy. The group was shocked, unable to believe everything before their eyes. A bunch of trash. At this moment, an indifferent and cold snort floated down. Who's there? The three tribe leaders suddenly turned around. They saw a young man dressed in black slowly walking out from the snowstorm behind them. His figure was thin, and he stood ramrod straight. His facial features seemed to be chiseled with a knife, and his eyes were filled with innate indifference. The strangest thing was that it had a pair of pitch-black dragon horns on its head. Looking at this person, the arrow slave's face slightly changed. He didn't know why, but his heart inexplicably beat faster. He had a deep sense of crisis, even though the other party didn't do anything. The thunder immortal and the black flame immortal also felt suffocated. Who are you? The arrow slave unconsciously pulled his golden bow. The black-robed youth said coldly, "Aunt, before you make a move against this sovereign, it's best for you to first weigh your own strength." The arrow slave raised his eyebrows and loosened his fingers. 2 arrows piercing through the void arrived in an instant. What was even more terrifying was that the black-clothed young man snorted, and 2 balls of pitch-black flames spurted out from his nostrils, burning the 2 arrows into nothingness. The arrow slave was shocked. The thunderbolt immortal and the black flame immortal stared at the same black flame and felt their blood freeze. They shouted together, "Raging thunder fire!" With a muffled rumble, the black mist that had once again gathered in the world erupted, engulfing the black-clothed youth within it. But what made them shudder was that no matter what the black mist did, it couldn't hurt him at all. The black-clothed youth said in a condescending tone, "Ants." Then, with a wave of his hand, the black fog that filled the sky was swept away. This scene caused the 3 of them to be overwhelmed with shock. "I need all of you. Follow me." The black-robed youth stepped into the void with his hands behind his back. The arrow slave and the 2 enlightened masters looked at each other with fear in their eyes. They hesitated for a moment and then followed up without any resistance. The other party could easily neutralize their strongest attacks. If he really attacked them, he could definitely kill them in an instant. The next moment, Suyu appeared on top of a cold, snowy peak. The yin-yang Tai Chi wings could travel billions of miles with a single thought. Looking at the snow-covered city below, the words Snow Tower came into view. Half a month earlier than planned, Suyu thought to himself. Presumably, Bai Yunfei and the others had just arrived. As for the first prince and the others, they should have been here for a long time. Suyu jumped into the Snow Tower. The city was full of creatures in the form of ice and snow that he saw on the snowy mountain that day. However, it was not uncommon to see aliens like Suyu. Walking past an ice and snow pavilion, Suyu suddenly felt a little murderous. He looked up and was shocked. Kalen. From the memory of the book Deity, Suyu knew that Kalen's breath had appeared in the Frogman tribe. He didn't expect to meet her here. At this moment, Kalen was leaning against the window on the 2nd floor, inadvertently glancing downstairs. Unexpectedly, she saw Suyu. She was shocked and couldn't help but reveal a touch of murderous intent. However, on second thought, the murderous intent disappeared, revealing a complex expression. After falling into the ancient god realm for half a year, Kalen knew that it was impossible for her to return to the demon realm, and she was no longer the maid of Princess Yunxia. What was the point of killing Suyu? Why don't you come up and have a drink? Kalen sighed. Suyu pondered for a moment and chose to go upstairs. It was very simple. He also wanted to get away to leave the ancient god realm from Kalen. No. Unfortunately, when the 2 of them sat down, she immediately responded. Her pretty eyes flashed, and Kalen was surprised. "Do you want to go back?" In the past, the 2 of them were mortal enemies. Now, they were drinking in a strange place, which was unimaginable in the past. Therefore, the atmosphere between the 2 of them was very strange. Hearing this, Suyu was a little regretful. It seemed that he still had to find a replica of the World Annihilation Plate. Hearing Kalen's words, Suyu asked, "Don't you plan to go back to the Star River God Realm?" "Why should I go back? This lost god realm is more than 10 times more prosperous than our Star River. In the demon realm, I can only be a level 6 deity, and I have no hope of seeing a higher level, but it is different here." Kalen looked at Suyu deeply and said, "I am different from you. You have great ambitions and have your eyes on the world. I only care about my own future." Suyu sighed silently. It is better not to go back. The Star River is about to be destroyed. The Demon Realm and the Eastern and Western alliances will all become tributes for the giant of the Bitter Sea to break through the shackles. I think it will be no exception. After hesitating for a moment, Kalen sighed faintly and looked much more relaxed. It is still early. The giant of the Bitter Sea has experienced thousands of years of reincarnation. Although he has reached the realm of level 1 deity, he still needs an opportunity to break through the shackles and become a medium deity. Oh, in this ancient god realm, he is also known as the Star River Overlord. It is not enough to swallow all the creatures. Su Yu's eyes flashed. What kind of opportunity do I need? The permission of a divine warrior of heaven and earth, that is, a superior deity. Hearing this, Su Yu frowned deeply. The giant of the bitter sea has a way to find a divine warrior of heaven and earth? In the past, all the 9 divine warriors had died. How could he get the permission of a divine warrior of heaven and earth? However, without full confidence, what was the point of the giant of the bitter sea going through thousands of years of reincarnation? He has no way, but Princess Yunxia has a way, Kalen said. Su Yu was surprised. I just feel it. Kalen frowned and said, as her maid, I can feel that Princess Yunxiao is different from ordinary people. She has a lot of things in this era. No, in the era of the ancient god realm. Su Yu's eyes flashed. For example, let ordinary demons transform into creatures of the holy magic hall? Kalen nodded. Exactly. I have been with her for many years, but I can't see through her at all, Kalen said. After some conversation, Su Yu was curious about Princess Yunxia again. What was the background of this mysterious woman? Could she find the permission of a divine warrior of heaven and earth from the Star River, where the 9 divine warriors died, and let the giant of the bitter sea become a medium deity? Hey, Sister Kalen, it is rare that you are interested in talking to a strange man. Kalen got up and bowed in the direction of the source of the voice. Young master. Su Yu looked in the direction of the voice. It was a simple and lovely little girl of 15 or 16 years old. She was looking at Su Yu and Kalen with curious eyes. Young master, this is an old friend of my Star River, Su Yu, Kalen said calmly. Hearing this, the little girl's eyes widened. Isn't he the bully who dominates the Star River and does all kinds of evil? Also, isn't he the one who caused you to fall into the god realm? Isn't he your mortal enemy? Why are you sitting together and talking? The bully who dominates the Star River and does all kinds of evil? Su Yu touched his nose and looked at Kalen strangely. Is this his image in the demon dimension? The demon dimension is the one who does all kinds of evil. Okay? Kalen blushed and stopped the little girl from talking. She glared at her and said, We have let go of the past. This little girl knew his identity, so it was not convenient for Su Yu to talk more with her. He cupped his hands and said, See you later. After saying that, he immediately left without asking her to stay. Kalen sighed. Young master, you deliberately revealed his origin, didn't you? The little girl, who had an innocent look on her face earlier, revealed a serious expression in the blink of an eye. She said unhurriedly, I just wanted to test this person. He is indeed vigilant enough. When he found out that his identity was exposed, he decisively went into seclusion and did not drag his feet at all. I somewhat believe your evaluation of him. However, it is still hard for me to believe that he is really a person who plays with the world like you said. Kalen sighed in a low voice. No one will believe it until they experience it themselves. I used to be the same. Looking at the young master, Kalen said thoughtfully, Young master, if you want to achieve great things, you can conquer the world with him alone. Conquer the world with him alone? Good. If he can come back from the ice-sealed river bottom alive, I will believe what you said, the young master said with a smile. As soon as he left the pavilion, Su Yu sensed someone glancing at him. It was a prince of the Imperial Sacred Faction. Su Yu? Since you are here, why don't you meet us immediately? The prince arrived and was surprised by Su Yu's speed. Su Yu looked at the pavilion and found the aura of Kalen and the young master had disappeared. Something happened. Let's go. Take me to meet them. In an ice palace. This was the palace built by the imperial family for the monarch to travel. In the palace, Su Yu saw the 14 people who had gathered together and were discussing something. Su Yu was the last one to arrive. Yongya Wuheng was surprised. What? You are much faster than I expected. Bai Yunfei and the other 3 people were also surprised by Su Yu's words. Didn't they say Su Yu couldn't meet them alive? It seemed he was fine. Moreover, Su Yu was only 1 day later than them. They were traveling in an Emperor-based Saint artifact, which was very fast. After looking at Su Yu for a while, Yongya Wuheng's eyes flashed, and he said in a sharp tone, Are you injured? Who beat you? We met some gangsters on the way. I have killed them. It's not a big deal. Suyu smiled and changed the topic. The ice-sealed river will be unsealed in half a month. Is everything going well? No, Yongye Wuheng said. The rest of the people also looked very serious. Suyu was surprised. What happened? Bai Yunfei wanted to save their relationship. So he said, Brother Su, the ice-sealed river is quite weird this time. I don't know what happened in the ruins. The age restriction and the number of people who can enter the ruins disappeared. Hearing that, Suyu was also surprised. It didn't sound like a big deal, but the actual situation was much more serious. Without the age restriction and the number of people who could enter the ruins, any powerhouse could enter the ruins. Fortunately, this incident hasn't been spread out yet. Very few people know about it. Therefore, the powerhouses of the entire empire won't swarm in here. Bai Yunfei said disappointedly. He had thought the danger of the ruins was quite tricky. He didn't expect there would be a more dangerous mutation, so he was a little relieved. Then, he asked, Do you know the reason for the mutation? The restriction of the ruins at the bottom of the ice-sealed river was set by the ancient god realm. If it could be changed, the Empire of Darkness, which used to be the World Annihilation Empire, would have already searched the ruins. However, even the Imperial Sacred Faction couldn't change it. Who else could change it? I guess the Moonwatch sect did it, Yongye Wuheng said seriously. Suyu frowned slightly. He had never heard of this name. It was not recorded in the historical records either. Chapter 1337. Yongye Wuheng glanced at Suyu and said in a deep voice, The history of the Moonwatch sect is longer than that of any Imperial Sacred Faction. It is said that before the ancient god realm came to this place, the Moonwatch sect was already there. Suyu was secretly shocked, an existence that was even more ancient than the ancient god realm. However, Suyu knew that this lost ancient god realm used to be located in the Xing River. Its current location should be another mysterious place outside the Xing River. Who are they? Suyu asked. Yongye Wuheng said. They are the original inhabitants of this place. We call them the primitive ancients. They arrived here earlier than the people of the ancient god realm. They worship the moon god, and all of them are followers of the moon god. They are collectively known as the Moonwatch sect. After the fall of the Ninth Emperor, the Moonwatch sect launched a great counterattack and enslaved us, the new immigrants, for millions of years. After that, we secretly accumulated our strength and united with the 9 imperial sacred sects at that time to resist together. Only then did we manage to expel them back to the Lost Nation. Suyu couldn't help but look at Yongye Chushue when he heard about the Lost Nation. Since then, the Moonwatch sect has been active. Every tens of thousands of years, they would appear in the divine realm and start wars and chaos. In history, there was another imperial sacred faction that was wiped out by the Moonwatch sect. To this day, the Moonwatch sect is still a great threat to the ancient god realm. So he was not surprised by this. The ancient god realm was considered an invader. As the original inhabitants of the Moonwatch sect, they were naturally unwilling to resist. But where was this place? According to the evil god's narration, the sinful lady and the world annihilation dragon had descended upon the world and destroyed the Star River divine realm. The 9 emperors had to self-destruct in order to suppress the sinful girl and the dragon of annihilation. Then, peace returned to the god realm of the Starry River. However, right at this moment, a huge black shadow shrouded the destroyed Star River celestial territory. It was only after this incident that a large area of the Star River god domain collapsed and vanished without a trace. From the looks of it, the lost god domain had been teleported to this mysterious water realm. In this region of water, there were also residents from outside the ancient god realm. Naturally, the two sides started a war and began a long history of struggle. However, the history was hidden by the Imperial Sacred Sect on purpose. Apart from the upper echelons of the dynasty, ordinary people didn't even know about the existence of the Archean citizens. After listening to Yongye Wuheng's narration, everyone's expression became even more solemn. For them, the Moonwatch sect was an extremely terrifying existence. Everyone was afraid of it. Bai Yunfei said, "The Moonwatch sect hasn't shown up for many years. It might not be their doing, right?" Yongya Wuheng sighed deeply and said, "I also hope so. However, a month ago, when I was exploring the ice-sealed river bottom, I fought with a woman. Judging from her moves, she is probably the new Saint Virgin of the Moonwatch sect, Luo Shuei." Shua. All the people present sat up in shock and stared at Yongya Wuheng in inexplicable shock. On the other hand, the members of the sovereign family had a solemn look on their faces. It was obvious that they already knew about this. Fu Hongchan was shocked. "Prince Wuheng, how was your fight?" He did not doubt Yongya Wuheng's judgment, because the way the Moonwatch sect attacked was very special, and it was impossible to hide it. This was the most important piece of information. Who was stronger, Yongya Wuheng or the new Saintess? If the Saintess was stronger, they would be in danger. Yongya Wuheng let out a bitter laugh and lifted the front of his shirt. A small and exquisite gray palm print was clearly reflected in everyone's eyes. In the palm print, there was a trace of strange power, which was neither spiritual qi nor divine power. It was extremely evil. It is indeed the unique sorcery power of the Moonwatch sect. Bai Yunfei gasped. Fu Hongqin's pupils constricted, and he said, "In that case, the fight, it was a draw," Yongya Wuheng said calmly, but he hid the truth in his heart. It was a draw because the Saintess of the Moonwatch sect didn't want to tremble. If the fight had continued, he would have died in less than 10 rounds. Hearing this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. According to the information we have received, mysterious people have been walking around the ice-sealed river bottom in the past 10 years. I think the changes in the ice-sealed river bottom must have something to do with the Moonwatch sect. No one had any objection to that. If there was anyone who could change the relic that even the Imperial Sacred Gate could not, it would be the Moonwatch sect, a mysterious group of people from the far ancient times. Since they changed the ruins, I think their target must be the ruins, Yongya Wuheng said. "I have sent a message back to the Imperial Sacred Faction to ask for reinforcements. If necessary, we will ask the Shui Lord of the North Territory to help us. We can't lose to the Moonwatch sect in this battle." When Suyu went back to his resting place, he looked serious. Behind him were the pursuers of the Imperial Sacred Faction. In front of him were the dangers of the ruins. Now, there were mysterious people from the ancient times who used sorcery power. Suyu had a strong sense of crisis. If he didn't prepare well, he might fail miserably this time. Sitting with his legs crossed, Suyu took out a jade pendant, which contained the heaven-fighting 3 strokes in the Shangwan Mansion. This was the essence of the combat skills of the sky fighting deity in the past. If he could comprehend some magical powers before entering the ice-sealed river bottom, he might be able to save his life on this trip. With a thought, Suyu's soul sank into the magic art in the jade pendant. Almost at the same time, Yongya Wuheng sat with his legs crossed in the secret room. After a while, he opened his eyes and sighed helplessly. The essence left by the sky-fighting deity is really beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. After 10 years, I have barely learned the first style. After sighing, Yongya Wuheng closed his eyes and continued to comprehend. As soon as Su Yu's soul was immersed in the jade pendant, he found himself in a vast land. The sky was high and deep. Su was a little confused. Is this a world created by magic arts? How could he cultivate in this world? While Suyu was deep in thought, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a shadow flashing across the ground. Suyu stared at the shadow, but there was no one there. Rumble. Suddenly, the sky roared fiercely. The endless high sky fell down crazily as if it was collapsing. A strong will of extermination surged from the depths of the sky. The earth was shaking under the collapsing sky. It was about to be destroyed. At this time, a cry of unwillingness spread through thousands of miles of mountains and rivers, roaring in the universe. The heavens are not destroyed, and the sky-fighting deity will not die. The first style, heaven trampling 3 steps. In a trance, a majestic figure appeared in the place where Su Yu had just glanced at. He was strong and had a dignified face, and his long beard was flying in the air. He looked up at the roaring sky without fear. Instead, He was full of fighting spirit. With a long shout, he stepped into the sky. Rumble. The first step is to break the sky. The second step is to fall the sky. The third step is to turn the world upside down. With just 3 steps, the collapsing, falling sky, which was about to destroy the world, was broken into pieces by these 3 steps and scattered to the ground. In this world, there is only the earth and a majestic figure standing on the earth. Suyu's blood was boiling as if the power immersed in his blood was awakened. Unconsciously, the shadow of the heaven-defying divine warrior appeared behind him. He had black hair and black eyes, looking down on the world and opposing all the injustices of the world. As if he had lost himself, Suyu kept thinking about the heaven-trampling 3 steps of the majestic figure. The first step is to break the sky. The second step is to fall the sky. The third step is to turn the world upside down. Suyu was totally immersed in it and couldn't extricate himself. Suyu was awakened by a light sound from the outside world. All of a sudden, the mysterious feeling quickly faded, and Suyu returned to reality. Suyu was quite disappointed as he still had the feeling of stepping on the sky. After taking a breath, Suyu stood up and walked towards the stone door of the secret room. However, he didn't expect Suyu's unintentional step would contain the charm of the heaven-trampling 3 steps. The special stone door couldn't be broken by deities. However, it was broken into pieces by Suyu's unintentional step. A shout came from outside the room. "Get out of the way!" Something went wrong in his secluded cultivation. Suyu was shocked. He controlled his strength hurriedly and looked outside. Then, he realized something was wrong. Outside the secret room, there were many people fighting. Fu Hongshun and the other 4 people, Bai Yunfei and the other 4 people, 5 people from the Imperial Sacred Faction, and 2 strange, strong men with extremely powerful auras. At this moment, except for the 2 strong men, the other 14 people were staring at the destroyed secret room and Suyu, who was in the secret room, in surprise. Just now, when they were outside the secret room, a horrible energy came out from the secret room. Then, the door of the secret room, which even deities couldn't break, was destroyed by that energy from the inside out. The remaining energy rushed towards them. If the 2 strong men didn't solve it in time, most of them would have been seriously injured or even killed by it. Bai Yunfei swallowed hard and said in surprise, "My God, it has only been half a month. What did he cultivate? How could he be so powerful now?" Zheng Xiaoyang also wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. In his eyes, Suyu was more powerful than a monster. All of them were shocked. Yongye Wuheng's eyes lit up because he was quite familiar with that energy just now. Suyu walked out calmly and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't control my strength properly and disturbed you. How long have I been in secluded cultivation?" Yongye Wuheng hid his surprise and said, "Half a month. I tried to wake you up a few days ago. However, you seem to be in a state of deep meditation, and I couldn't wake you up. Today, we are about to leave, so I decided to use the soul-shocking technique. I hope it didn't affect your important cultivation." As he said this calmly, he stared at Suyu without blinking as if he wanted to see something from Suyu's expression. However, Suyu was surprised. Then he said cleverly, "I didn't expect I would cultivate for so long." In the sky collapsing space, Suyu felt only a few hours had passed. He didn't expect 15 days had passed in the outside world. "Sorry to keep you waiting. Let's go now." Suyu didn't mention anything about what had happened just now. Yongye Wuheng nodded his head. However, his lips were moving silently. Apparently, he was sending a message. Behind him, the 2 top-notch experts who had rushed over from the Empire to provide assistance looked at Suyu profoundly and transmitted their voices to him. What a frightening power. He must have released it unintentionally just now. If he had used it intentionally, its power would have been extraordinary. Hearing this, Yongye Wuheng was shocked. These 2 deities were the guards that the monarch relied on the most. They were peerless powerhouses in the 3rd heaven. Except for Shangwan Feiyu, almost no one in the dynasty could defeat them. It was the first time that Yongye Wuheng heard the words "very terrible" from them. Chapter 1338. They met up and set off to the frozen river. Please search to see the full list. The novel of the day the ice-sealed river miraculously kept the shape of a river in the water. It was frozen for billions of miles all year round. Due to the special cold air, the ice that was formed was also extraordinarily hard. Even a level 3 deity could only dig out a layer of ice that was 100 feet thick in a year. The ice-sealed river was tens of thousands of meters deep. There was no force that could dig to the bottom of the river, let alone the ruins at the bottom of the river. Only once every 100 years would the frozen river bottom be unsealed. Millions of miles of ice would melt, and only after 2 months would the ice begin to solidify again. Within 2 months, the 15 of them would have the opportunity to explore the ruins at the bottom of the river. Of course, based on the current situation, it was likely that the 15 of them would not be the only ones entering. On this day, 15 people and 2 level 3 deities arrived at the frozen river. After waiting for half a day, a scorching flame suddenly erupted from the depths of the frozen river. The tens of thousands of feet thick ice shattered with a loud rumble. Flames rose from the cracks in the ice and soared into the sky, igniting the entire river and extending for billions of miles. The spectacular scene was shocking. The frozen river, which had been frozen for 100 years, finally melted, as the rumors said. "Get into the water!" Yongya Wuheng shouted in a low voice and took the lead to jump into the river. Bai Yunfei and the others followed closely behind. Suyu stood by the riverside and looked at the flames in amazement. He murmured, "Where did these flames come from? And it's so powerful that it can burn the ice-sealed river for billions of miles?" Filled with doubts, Suyu followed them to the bottom of the river. In the depths of the river, one could clearly see ancient ruins sealed in ice, but they had lost their exploration value. Only an extremely large heaven stairway stood perfectly intact in the world of the river. The heaven stairway was filled with the aura of time, as if it had experienced hundreds of millions of years. There were many cracks on it, as if it was about to be destroyed. Suyu knew that the stairway to heaven was the entrance to the ruins. The number of steps one took on the stairway to heaven represented how deep one would be teleported into the ruins. If the imperial sacred sect wanted to enter the sacred region, which was the deepest part of the historical remains, they had to walk to the top of the stairs. Then, they would be teleported to the sacred region. Suyu and the others wanted to enter the devil area, which was the central region of the ruins, so they just had to walk to the middle of the stairs. As for Fu Hongshun and the others, they only needed to take 2 steps to be teleported to the outermost mortal realm. The 5 people from the Imperial Sacred Sect were the first to step on the stairs. Very quickly, they reached the end of the stairs. After standing there for a few breaths of time, they silently disappeared at the end of the stairs. Bai Yunfei said fawningly, "Big Brother Su, you first." "Wait." However, Fu Hongshun stopped him. Bai Yunfei raised his eyebrows and said, "Fu Hongshun, do you still want to make trouble now? The Imperial Sacred Faction won't let you off if you ruin the expedition." Fu Hongshun didn't look at him. Instead, he stared at Suyu and said, "I want to challenge you again." Suyu turned to look at him and nodded calmly. "Sure." Turning around, Suyu said to him, "You can make the first move, then I won't stand on ceremony." Fu Hongshun didn't show any arrogance on his face. His clothes were torn into pieces by his strong body, revealing his ferocious and powerful physique. With a stomp of his feet, he transformed into a wisp of afterimages that caused others to be completely unable to discern where he was. Bai Yunfei's eyes narrowed. How fast? He is obviously much faster than the last time we fought. Boom! All of a sudden, an extremely ferocious fist energy pierced through the air. Bai Yunfei, Zheng Xiaoyang, and the others were shocked by it. Oh no, this is a punch that is almost as powerful as a deity's punch. His body must have been modified during this period of time. They wanted to help Fu Hongshun, but it was too late. Fu Hongshun's fierce and horrible punch was only 3 feet away from Suyu. However, when they were shouting in surprise, Suyu put down one of his hands and clenched his fists, which were covered with a layer of black scales. Then his fists collided with Fu Hongshun's punch accurately and rapidly in the air. Crack! A sound similar to the sound of bamboo breaking could be heard in the air. Someone's bones were broken. Thud, 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 as a figure kept stepping back. Everyone in this area couldn't help but gasp in fear. The one who was stepping back was Fu Hongchun. However, Suyu just stood there motionlessly. Then, he withdrew his fist, which was covered with black scales, as if nothing had happened. Fu Hongchun's right arm was covered with blood, and a large part of his arm bones were broken. Streaks of blood kept dripping down from the corners of Fu Hongchun's mouth. Bai Yunfei couldn't say a word, as if something was stuck in his throat. When Suyu defeated Shui Qingchun, Bai Yunfei thought Suyu relied on the power of his magic treasure. However, Fu Hongchun's punch was absolutely more powerful than Shui Qingchun's most powerful punch. Suyu caught Shui Qingchun's punch and injured him. Only a real deity could do that. Fu Hongchun wiped the blood off the corners of his mouth and said seriously, "As I expected, you have been hiding your strength. It was not a fluke that you defeated me last time." Since he saw Suyu accidentally destroyed the door of the secret room, which even deities couldn't break, Fu Hongchun knew he was no match for Suyu at all. Now that they had arrived at the ice-sealed river bottom, Suyu didn't need to worry about showing his strength anymore. Winner takes all. You can do whatever you want us. I admit defeat. Fu Hongchun was mentally prepared for this. If Suyu killed them here, the Imperial Sacred Faction wouldn't punish them as long as the information was not leaked out. Let's go. Just don't disturb me, Suyu said calmly as he turned around and walked up the stairs. Bai Yunfei and the others looked at each other and felt it was a pity to miss such a great opportunity. Fu Hongchun was stunned by Suyu's words. Thinking of his aggressive behavior and Suyu's disregard, Fu Hongchun couldn't help but smile bitterly. Maybe Suyu always regarded him as an ant and didn't care about him. After thinking for a while, Fu Hongchun said, "Wait, let me tell you a piece of news." Suyu stopped and looked back at him. Shui Xiaoman, the eldest daughter of the Shui Lord of the North Territory, will also come to the ice-sealed river bottom. Her target is the Myriad Bone Mountain. Suyu said, "So what?" Fu Hongchun said, "Shui Xiaoman is Shui Qingchun's elder sister. She loves him very much. If she meets you, she will never let you go. You have to be careful. She is very powerful and is known as the most powerful young cultivator in the North Territory. She can even exchange 100 blows with Yongya Wuheng. She is very dangerous." Feather nodded his head calmly. "Then just kill her." After saying that, Suyu disappeared from the stairs, leaving Fu Hongchun and the others who were dumbfounded. He is really arrogant. I guess he doesn't know who Shui Xiaoman is. Zhang Yang's mouth twitched. Fu Hongchun was also stunned by Suyu's words. Then he said with a sense of frustration, "This is the difference between us and him." On the same day, many unidentified experts arrived at the bank of the ice-sealed river one after another. They found the stairs accurately and entered the depths of the ice-sealed river. When Suyu appeared again, he was in a spacious world where birds were singing and flowers were fragrant. Suyu was cheered up. He had been in the water for 1 year. Now he was excited to see the land. It's amazing. The inside of the ruins is still in its original form, even though it has been submerged for billions of years. Suyu murmured. Then he found he was not in the same place as Bai Yunfei and the others. They had been teleported to different areas. Suyu found he was near a gloomy and dark palace ruins. As he glanced at the ruins, Suyu's heart started to beat fast. A sense of danger rose in his heart. In the blink of an eye, Suyu retreated immediately without thinking. Crack! Just as he was about to leave, a long tongue that had teleported swept out from a dark and gloomy hall and swept away the place where Suyu had just been standing. The tongue was covered with a corrosive liquid, which corroded the space in this place. White smoke rose from it. Even though Suyu was thousands of feet away, he still felt his skin was stinging as if it was about to be burned. Suyu was scared. Then, he activated his soul eyes to see through the ruins and entered the dark palace. There was an enormous toad lying in the middle of the hall. Its body was covered with deadly poisonous liquid. It was staring at Suyu coldly with a pair of dark green eyes. The demonic energy it was emitting was quite terrifying. a demonic beast at the same level as the Dakini. Suyu was surprised. According to the classification system of the ancient god realm, deities were divided into 3 levels and 9 levels. It was said that deities could break through the shackles of the world. When a deity became a deity, he would be shackled by level 6. Every time a deity got rid of a shackle, his strength would be improved by 1 level. Ordinary deities were divided into level 6 deities. Deities at the level of tribe leaders were divided into level 5 deities. Deities like the Dakini and Alliance Master Luo were divided into level 4 deities. Powerful deities like the Sixth Princess were divided into level 3 deities. Deities like the First Prince were divided into level 2 deities. As for the level 1 deities, Suyu had only met the demonic god of 6 paths. The toad in front of him was a level 4 deity, which was much more powerful than the tribe leaders. Suyu was shocked. He left immediately and memorized this water area. How unlucky I am. I accidentally teleported to the mouth of a level 4 demonic beast. Suyu murmured. Then, he sensed the direction of the Myriad Bone Mountain and rushed towards it. The Myriad Bone Mountain was located in the center of the Devil Realm. It was one of the few places that had not been fully excavated. Since ancient times, it had been the focus of the Empire's excavation. Unfortunately, due to the restriction of conditions, only non-deities could enter the Devil Realm. Therefore, a large part of it had not been excavated. After traveling for several days, Suyu saw a barren mountain, which was millions of feet high, standing on the horizon. The afterglow of the barren mountain was covered in a layer of blood-red halo, giving off a strange, evil feeling that made people shudder. Inside the barren mountain, there was a strange energy that blocked the sky nearby. Therefore, people could only climb the mountain on foot. According to Suyu's perception, Bai Yunfei and the others had arrived here earlier than him. With a thought, Suyu immediately rushed over. This mountain was very large, and there were many paths to climb it. When Suyu passed by a path, he found traces of someone who had passed by this path. Someone had arrived here earlier than him. As expected, the abnormal change of the ice-sealed river bottom had been noticed by some people. Suyu flew to the path where Bai Yunfei and the others were and started to climb along the path quickly. As soon as he stepped on the mountain, Suyu felt an amazing pressure on his body. He could walk as fast as flying, but now he was climbing the mountain step by step like an ordinary person. Suyu sensed it carefully and found the pressure came from inside the mountain, which was leaking out bit by bit. There is something weird in this mountain. Suyu's eyes lit up as he started to climb along the path. Along the way, he saw many strange and ferocious creatures who had been killed. However, as he continued to climb, Suyu also found the blood left by them. Some of them were injured, and their injuries were not light. After climbing for another 2 hours, a shriveled corpse, whose flesh and blood had been sucked out, was lying on the ground quietly. Chapter 1339. Judging from the time of death, it should have been 4 hours ago. Judging from the traces of fighting nearby, Bai Yunfei and his 3 companions fought back, but one of them was killed. The other 3 escaped. They had encountered an unknown danger. There was a finger-thick hole on the neck of the corpse. Combined with the fact that the flesh and blood had been sucked dry, it should be the work of a demonic beast. 2 hours later, Suyu found another corpse on the mountain road. It was also a descendant of a military officer. His flesh and blood had also been sucked dry, becoming a dry corpse. Suyu narrowed his eyes slightly and quickened his pace. Another 2 hours later, Suyu was almost halfway up the mountain. A fierce, clanging sound came from afar. Someone was there. Suyu flew up and glanced around. He found that Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang were not the only ones on the mountainside. There were 3 men and a woman in black robes, 2 men and 1 woman, who exuded the aura of a level 6 deity. The woman's face was pale, and her neck was bleeding profusely. She was very weak. Since the restrictions were lifted, deities could also come to the Myriad Bone Mountain. However, even the 3 deities were not much different from Bai Yunfei and his companions. They all looked solemn as they faced a strange demonic beast surrounded by them. At first glance, It looked like a giant bird, but its golden beak was as long as a spear. It was extremely ferocious. The edge of its beak was stained with golden divine blood, which came from the injured woman. The giant bird with a sharp beak sneered as it looked around at the 5 people present. It was very fierce and harsh. Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang's eyes were filled with fear. When they encountered this monster on the road, they turned tail and fled. Along the way, 2 of their companions were killed, and when they finally reached the waist of the mountain, they encountered 3 gods of unknown origins. This giant bird and the deities fought immediately, so they had a chance to survive. Brother Yunfei, if we had known this earlier, we would have waited for Brother Su patiently for a few more days. 2 of our companions were killed, and we were also in trouble, Zheng Xiaoyang complained. The place they were teleported to was very close to the Myriad Bone Mountain. It was only 4 to 6 hours' journey. After waiting for a day, they didn't see Su Yu. When they found other mysterious people started to climb the mountain, they couldn't help but feel anxious. Not long after they climbed the mountain, they encountered an extremely terrible demonic beast. This demonic beast had appeared 3 times in the historical records. It was called Ghost Bat, and it was said to be the messenger of the 9-headed demon saint. It rarely appeared. According to the records, all those who encountered this demonic beast would be annihilated without exception. According to the records, all those who encountered this demonic beast would be annihilated. Bai Yunfei felt remorseful as well, but when he looked to the dying woman, he spoke. Even if Brother Su were here, he might not be a match for this beast. However, when he moved, of the 2 deities and the ghost bat, a black-robed man who seemed to be of the leader of the demonic beast shouted, of. However, when they moved, of the bat, the ghost by of the leader, a Yunfei people, of the 3, ghost Yunfei of the demons, of demon of the of. How could Bai Yunfei not understand this? But he also knew that the 3 of them were using the 2 of them as bait to divert the ghost bat's attention so that they could attack them. Suddenly, the ghost bat moved. As it flapped its huge black wings, a gust of wind was generated. Then it disappeared on the spot. The next moment, it reappeared behind a deity in a black robe. Then, it grabbed the deity's shoulders with its sharp claws. Then, its ferocious beak pierced into the deity's neck as fast as lightning. "Watch out!" The leading deity shouted angrily. As he attacked the deity crazily, he said, "Defend yourselves." The deity who was grabbed by the beak turned pale with fright. Then, he hurriedly took out an animal skin which was covered with weird patterns. Its defensive power was not weaker than Xue Qingxin's imitation Emperor-based Saint artifact. At the same time, strands of gray energy gushed out from the deity's body and turned into a complicated rune to block the beak. Puff! The sharp beak was extremely sharp, and it pierced through the beast's skin in an instant. There was not the slightest bit of resistance. Then, the beak pierced into the gray rune like a lightning. After a few seconds, the rune was broken, but it was also these few breaths of time that saved his life. At this time, the leading deity rushed over and shouted, "Mind-confusing curse." As he pointed his finger at the sky, the gray fog around his fingertip disappeared into the void and formed invisible ripples. The ripples swept over the ghost bat. The greedy ghost bat was distracted. Its body shook, and its beak stopped piercing into the deity's body for a moment. Seizing this opportunity, the deity who was grabbed by the ghost bat shouted. Then, he shook his body and got rid of the sharp claws of the ghost bat. However, a large piece of his flesh was torn off. Chirp! Seeing that its prey had escaped, the ferocious ghost bat turned around and tried to grab the female deity who was seriously injured. Even in her heyday, she had failed to defend herself against this beast, let alone now, when she was seriously injured. "How dare you?" the leading deity shouted. Then, the gray fog around him surged up, great compassion mantra of ghosts. In an instant, the ear-piercing cries of ghosts resounded throughout the world. The ghost bat, who was flying in the sky, was disturbed. Then it showed up. Seizing this opportunity, the female deity rushed to the side of her partner. Having failed to catch the female deity again, the ghost bat became more ferocious. It turned around and kept roaring at the three deities. The faces of the three deities were pale. Except for the leader, who was only a little bit weak, the others were all injured. Let's go. We are no match for it. Let's go down the mountain and ask for reinforcements. The leading deity made a prompt decision. The ghost bat understood what they meant. It circled around and flew toward them again. The expressions of the three deities changed slightly. The deity who had been grabbed by the ghost bat sucked Zheng Xiaoyang into his body and threw him backward. Chi! A pair of sharp claws pierced through Zheng Xiaoyang's body as if they were cutting through a piece of paper. The ghost bat showed up and stabbed at Zheng Xiaoyang with its ferocious beak without hesitation. Only by doing this could the three deities have enough time to escape. Bai Yunfei's expression changed abruptly. He was shocked and angry, but he didn't dare to rescue Zheng Xiaoyang. Please sacrifice yourself later. A sinister glint flashed in the eyes of the deity who had been captured. He pulled Bai Yunfei over to him and held him in his palm. If the ghost bat caught up with them, he would throw Bai Yunfei out to buy them some time. However, right at this moment, the leader seemed to have sensed something. His expression changed abruptly. Chongshan, watch out. Chongshan was trying to catch Bai Yunfei. When he heard the leader's warning, he sensed danger. He saw a golden shadow dashing toward him across the void. The destructive power of the golden afterimage shocked Chongshan, who was a god. He sensed danger in his chest, as if death was coming. Puff! The golden shadow didn't give him any time to react. It pierced through his hand from his palm to his arm, and then came out from his shoulder blade. The powerful force knocked Chongshan away and sent him flying toward the ghost bat. Oh no! The leading deity and the female deity changed their expressions at the same time. They could see the ghost bat's beak piercing through Chongshan. Puff! With a dull sound, as if something had been pierced through, the leading deity and the female deity felt a chill all over their bodies. However, when they looked back, they froze on the spot as if they had seen a ghost. The 10-meter-long beak of the ghost bat was pierced through by a golden shadow. The golden shadow pierced through its beak and then came out of its body, leaving a trail of golden divine blood behind. The powerful force destroyed the ghost bat's body. The ghost bat screamed miserably. It dropped Zheng Xiaoyang and fell to the ground, screaming and rolling on the ground. When it swept its wings, it destroyed a mountain, creating a deafening sound. Gradually, the struggling of the ghost bat became weaker and weaker. Then it stopped moving and stopped looking at the broken lines. The three deities in black robes were shocked. They looked at the dead body of the ghost bat and then at the broken lines. Their expressions changed dramatically. Bai Yunfei ran over to help Zheng Xiaoyang up. Feeding him a healing pill, Bai Yunfei turned to the source of the thread and bowed to Zheng Xiaoyang. Thank you for saving us, Senior. Please accept a bow from the two of us. However, a force helped them up. At the same time, they heard a voice that shocked and delighted them. Fortunately, I arrived in time. You two are fine. A figure in white suddenly appeared in front of them like a ghost and helped them up. Looking at the white figure in front of them, they burst into tears of joy. Bai Yunfei said guiltily, Brother Su, it was my fault. I was too impatient and hurt my two brothers. If I had waited for you, the result would have been different. Su Yu said, we didn't agree to go up the mountain together. You don't have to blame yourself. Hearing that, Bai Yunfei shed tears of gratitude. His heart was full of longing. Zheng Xiaoyang's eyes lit up. He said in surprise, Brother Su, how strong are you? Even the ghost bat was killed by an arrow. I will follow you from now on. I will do anything for you. Su Yu smiled. It was nothing. Don't mention it. You two step back. As he said that, he looked at the three deities on the other side of the river and said seriously, Are you from Moonwatch sect? The gray fog and the strange spell that was cast just now did not seem to belong to an ordinary person. Hearing that, Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang also came to their senses. They were full of hostility. Brother Su, what they cast just now was sorcery. They are definitely from the Moonwatch sect. The three deities were also looking at Su Yu. They thought he was a powerful deity, but they didn't expect he was just a stage for a mortal fairy. They were shocked and relieved. They guessed that it was some kind of powerful magic weapon just now. The deity, whose arm was severely injured, said coldly, "Sir, you have hurt my arm. Do you want to give me an explanation?" "Explanation?" Suyu sneered. "You should be glad that the target of the arrow was the ghost bat. You just taught a lesson. If you want to die, I will help you now." Hearing that, the deity couldn't help but sneer. "It seems you don't understand how horrible the Moonwatch sect is. If you attack me secretly, I might be afraid of you. However, now that you have shown yourself, humph, do you think I will let you go safely?" Chapter 1340. "Huh, huh," Suyu said with a cold smile. He didn't plan to fight with them because Bai Yunfei and his companions weren't worth his effort. However, it seemed the arrow was not enough to teach them a lesson. Strands of killing intent rose in Suyu's eyes. "Killing intent? You overestimate yourself." The deity sneered as he shook his arm. Then, his destroyed arm was healed immediately. "Chongshan, stop!" The leading deity shouted at Suyu calmly. He looked Suyu up and down coldly. Then, he said solemnly, "Young man, I will give you a chance to follow us deities." "A chance?" Suyu said with a faint smile. He could kill a level 6 deity easily, but this young man dared to talk about following him. The leading deity didn't like Suyu's attitude. With his hands behind his back, he scolded Suyu in a condescending tone. "You should show some respect to those who control your life." After saying that, he said, "The chance I will give you is to follow us with that treasure." "What if I say no?" Suyu said with a faint smile. The leading deity said calmly, "Then we will take over that treasure. Our sorcery strength might not be able to control the treasures of the aliens. However, it won't be a problem for us to control the treasure of an alien." "Fine. Why don't you tell me what I can get from following you?" Suyu said calmly. The leading deity said with a smile, "Young man, I don't need to tell you the benefits of following a deity. We can guide you in your cultivation and help you reach the prospective deity realm as soon as possible. This is a great opportunity that ordinary people can't even dream of. Now, you are so lucky, but you don't know how lucky you are?" "Huh, huh, huh," Suyu said with a smile. "Are you sure this is a blessing? You are not using me as cannon fodder? This companion of yours has used his actions to illustrate your style." The leading deity said calmly, "Of course, we should deal with trash in the same way. However, the Moonwatch sect is very tolerant of talented people. What do you think? Do you want to follow us?" The leading deity asked calmly. Chongshan was a little discontented. "Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Just kill him." Suyu laughed. "I know a way to obtain everything you have without having to follow you." The leading deity frowned. "Tell me about it." "I will kill all of you," Suyu said lightly. Hearing this, the chief deity and Chongshan's faces darkened. Chongshan said fiercely, "I told you, this kind of ungrateful thing won't know pain without being taught a bloody lesson." As he spoke, Chongshan turned into a beam of light and flew towards Suyu. This time, the leading deity snorted coldly and didn't try to stop him anymore. He shouted, "Keep his soul alive. If the magic treasure needs magic arts to be activated, we will force him to hand over the magic arts." "All right," Chongshan sneered as he approached Suyu in an instant. "Little brat, my arm is not that easy to injure." Bang! However, as soon as he finished speaking, an enormous black shadow suddenly flashed before his eyes, and he could vaguely hear the roar of a dragon resounding by his ears. In the next moment, a bone-piercing pain came from his entire body. Along with a dull sound, Chongshan screamed miserably. Then, his body exploded into countless pieces, leaving only his soul. Then a huge pitch-black dragon claw suddenly slammed down and grabbed his soul tightly. Everything happened in a split second. Chongshan didn't even realize what had happened. When he raised his head, he saw a ferocious dragon head was right in front of him. Chongshan only had time to scream in terror before he was crushed by the dragon's claw. The chief deity and the goddess were petrified when they saw this scene. In their eyes, Suyu turned into a long black dragon and smashed Chongshan into pieces with one claw. A dignified deity was so weak that he couldn't even withstand a single blow. How? How could it be? The World Annihilation Dragon. The chief deity and the goddess couldn't believe the black dragon in front of them. Suyu returned to his human form. Then he shook off the divine blood on his palm and said calmly, "Not only your arm is not injured, but your life is also so easy to be killed." Then Suyu turned around and looked at the other two deities. Being stared at by Suyu, the two deities couldn't help but shiver in fear. Beads of cold sweat dripped down from their foreheads. "Do you still want my treasure?" Suyu smiled coldly. Hearing this, the two deities turned pale with fear in their eyes. The chief deity said in a trembling voice, This was Chongshan's idea. It was his idea to capture your companions. It had nothing to do with me. But you didn't stop him." Suyu's smile became colder and colder, and his killing intent became more and more intense. The chief deity clenched his teeth and said, cupping his fists, "Please forgive me for offending you just now. Why don't you let me go? Then I won't report this to the Moonwatch sect." Suyu squinted his eyes and said, "Are you threatening me? It's just an exchange of interests. I believe you should know how horrible the Moonwatch sect is. To be honest, the Moonwatch sect has set up a tight encirclement in this place. If you report this to the Moonwatch sect, it will be extremely difficult for you to leave this place alive." As soon as the chief deity finished his words, Suyu turned into a black dragon again and dashed towards him coldly. The chief deity was totally shocked. "How dare you, Bang?" The giant dragon turned into a shadow and pierced through the chief deity, setting off a bloody wind and a rain of blood. This time, even his soul was killed. Suyu's cold face was revealed when the shadow of the dragon returned to his real body. "I told you, I hate being threatened." After saying that, he stared at the female deity coldly. The female deity was so scared that she screamed and knelt down to beg for mercy hurriedly. "My lord, please spare my life. I don't want to die. Please let me go." "Let you go?" Suyu said coldly after thinking for a while. "That's not impossible. Okay, I am willing to do anything for you." The female deity said hurriedly. Suyu said, "Let me ask you a few questions. First, what are you doing here?" The female deity hesitated a bit and said, "The three of us were assigned to the Myriad Bone Mountain to fight for the remains of the deities. How many of you are here? How powerful are you?" The female deity said, "In addition to us, there are 10 other people who are all at the deity realm. Their strength is almost the same as ours. Only the Grand Wizard is a level 5 deity." The Grand Wizard? A level 5 deity was a tribe leader. Suyu frowned slightly. The Moonwatch sect was really full of powerful experts. They even sent a tribe leader to deal with the Myriad Bone Mountain. "Who did you send to the Saint Realm?" Suyu asked. The female deity hesitated for a while and said, "The little Saint Lady. The Saint Lady of the demonic cult also came here." According to Yongya Wuheng, he was not a match for the little Saint Lady at all and was almost killed by her. Yongya Wuheng was at least as powerful as a tribe leader. This little Saint Lady was extremely powerful. She was at least a level 4 deity. "Okay, one last question," Suyu said. The female deity's eyes lit up. "Go ahead." Chapter 1341. Without waiting for the female deity to answer, a crack appeared between her eyebrows and devoured her soul. All the memories of the wizard tribe in her soul were absorbed by Suyu. Compared with the enormous memory of the book deity, the memory of the female deity was only carried by a tombstone. Suyu activated time acceleration and digested all the memories in just a few minutes. Wizard ancestor, sorcery, witchcraft, it's really interesting, Suyu murmured. He inhaled and collected all the divine blood on the ground. Some of it was absorbed into his body. With a thought, he muttered some obscure language, and a strange grayish-black fog appeared on the surface of his body. It was sorcery. Curse of Incubus! Suyu shouted, and an invisible wave floated out of his mouth. As the wave passed, Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang fell asleep without warning. They were strong late-stage prospective deities, but they had no power to resist the sorcery. "Wake up! Suyu said softly, and Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang opened their eyes blankly. When they realized that they had fallen into a dream, they couldn't help but be shocked. If this had happened during a battle, how terrible would it have been? Brother Su, you have learned sorcery. Bai Yunfei couldn't believe it. It was said that the sorcery of the Moonwatch sect was born from the belief of the wizard ancestor. It was impossible for outsiders to learn it. But Suyu, how could they know that Suyu had the magical power to imitate all the bloodline powers? It was not difficult to get the divine blood of this deity and use it as a medium to stimulate the power in the bloodline. Some tricks, Suyu said casually. After thinking for a while, he asked, I was transported to a strange ruin and encountered a level 4 deity toad. Do you know what it was? Even at this moment, Suyu still felt extremely dangerous when he recalled the scene at that time. Toad! Bai Yunfei frowned and was lost in thought. Suddenly, he seemed to think of something and his expression changed. Are you talking about the 7 poisons demonic toad in the dark ruins? Zheng Xiaoyang heard this and stared at Suyu as if he was looking at a ghost. You saw the 7 poisons demonic toad come back alive? Oh, is the 7 poisons demonic toad famous? Suyu was thinking. Zheng Xiaoyang's scalp went numb as he said, Not just famous, it's simply infamous. Ever since the 7 poisons demonic toad was recorded, it has been known for its ferocity. It has never given up on any prey it has set its eyes on. Once, the 7 poisons demonic toad chased a prey from the Een ruins to the myriad bone mountain. It even woke up the 9-headed demon sage and fought with it. In the end, it took away the prey. It's hard to imagine that the 7 poisons monster toad is actually willing to let you go. This is the first time in recorded history. Upon hearing that, Suyu fell into deep thought. When the demonic toad of 7 poisons was hunting him, he was alerted in advance and escaped. It seemed that the demonic toad had no intention of pursuing him. Was he not the target of the 7 poisons demonic toad? With a flicker of light in his eyes, Suyu put this matter aside and turned to look at the corpse of the ghost bat on the ground. Do you know what this is? Bai Yunfei looked at the corpse of the ghost bat and was still scared. He said, This thing is called the ghost bat. It's said that it's the messenger of the 9-headed monster saint. It's always with a 9-headed monster saint. When it's in a deep sleep, it protects it and rarely comes out. I don't know why we met one. It's really strange. Is that so? Suyu looked at the peak of the myriad bone mountain, which was hidden in the depths of the clouds. After thinking for a long time, he said, You've heard the interrogation of the witches just now. The degree of danger of this expedition is beyond our expectations. It's no longer a simple trial. I can't guarantee your safety on the journey ahead. Upon hearing that, Bai Yunfei and Zheng Xiaoyang became serious at the same time. First, the ghost bat appeared mysteriously, and then the Moonwatch sect. It was said that even the great wizards at the level of the tribe leader were on the myriad bone mountain. With their strength, they would only have a slim chance of survival if they insisted on climbing the mountain. Suyu asked them this question because he wanted them to make a choice. After thinking for a while, Bai Yunfei cupped his fists and said, Brother Su, you've saved us twice, and we can't thank you enough. It's not appropriate for us to be a burden to you anymore. Xiaoyang and I will withdraw now. Anyway, if you can't get the blueprint, we'll have no hope. As he spoke, Bai Yunfei handed a map to Suyu. This is the place where Grand Tutor Yuan hid the blueprint. 100 years ago, Grand Tutor Yuan's people set up a small transportation portal here in the Myriad Bone Mountain. For 100 years, anything that he thought must be sealed would be sent to the vicinity of this transportation portal through the transportation portal. Find the transportation portal, and you'll find the blueprint. Suyu took it and nodded. Be careful on the way down. After saying that, he opened the map and glanced at it. After confirming the location of the transportation portal, he continued to climb the mountain. 2 hours later, Suyu was about to reach the top of the Myriad Bone Mountain. The mountain here was full of rugged rocks and steep cliffs. Danger lurked everywhere. A slight misstep would cause one to fall off the cliff. In the vicinity of the Myriad Bone Mountain, where flying was prohibited, even a deity would be smashed into pieces if he fell from such a height. Suyu jumped onto the eaves and walked on the walls here. Soon, he arrived at a place where there were many strange rocks. According to the map, this was where the formation was located. However, Suyu didn't rush in carelessly. Instead, he jumped to a higher place and looked down at the area where the formation was located. He couldn't help but change his expression. The formation was located in a valley with a groove. However, there was more than just the formation in the valley. On the cliff wall of the valley, there were ghost bats hanging one after another. They were all in a deep sleep. Occasionally, they would flap their wings and make creepy, strange sounds. In the valley, there were densely packed white bones. They were the remains of the young talents who had fallen on the myriad bone mountain all these years. Suyu roughly counted and found that there were thousands of them. Even Suyu couldn't help but feel his scalp go numb. The slightest movement would wake them up. Even a level 4 deity would die and his soul would be destroyed. The ruins are getting more and more strange. Suyu's eyes were filled with a profound light. According to Bai Yunfei and the others, the ghost bats have been guarding the 9-headed demon saint all year round. Now, all these ghost bats had come out. It was really strange. Fortunately, it was me. If it had been Bai Yunfei and the others, those blueprints wouldn't have been taken out this time. Suyu thought to himself. With a shift of thought, Suyu activated the divine path of invisibility. At the same time, he combined it with the power of law and became invisible. He carefully climbed down the cliff of the valley slowly. Suyu was extremely careful with every step he took. He didn't want to make any noise to avoid alerting the ghost bats. The valley didn't seem deep, but Suyu used both his hands and feet to climb for an hour before he finally reached the bottom. Along the way, he touched the sleeping ghost bats several times. Huff! Suyu secretly took a breath and looked at the box that was 10,000 feet away. The blueprint of the World Annihilation Plate replica was in the box. Maintaining a calm heart, Suyu continued to walk towards the box with light steps. 10,000 feet, 8,000 feet, 6,000 feet, 4,000 feet. It was right in front of him and within his reach. Suyu held his breath and focused his mind. He quietly opened a Buddha bead and prepared to take away all the boxes. Chapter 1342. Several powerful auras suddenly descended from the primordial era. Suyu was shocked. He looked up and saw a few translucent ice giants standing majestically at the peak of the mountain, surrounding the valley. Those ice giants were all deity-level puppets, similar to the deity-level puppets that Bai Yunfei gave to Suyu. The ice giants roared and jumped down from the valley, attacking the ghost bats that were hanging on the cliff and sleeping along the way. Chirp! With a shrill shriek, the first ghost bat was awakened. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, the silent valley was suddenly filled with the screeches of countless ghost bats. One by one, pitch-black figures exuded a ferocious aura as they flew. In an instant, the sky was filled with pitch-black shadows that flickered above the valley. The group of giant puppets was torn into pieces by the black shadows before they could even resist. However, the ghost bats that were awakened were furious. They did not stop because of the death of the puppets. Instead, they screamed and rushed out of the valley, searching around. Suyu held his breath and stood motionless. Even when 2 ghost bats brushed past him, Suyu resisted the urge to move. At that time, the slightest movement would be detected by the ghost bats. Then, thousands of ghost bats would rush down from the sky, and there would be nowhere for him to hide, no matter how good he was at hiding. When all the ghost bats left, Suyu felt a chill down his spine. It was too dangerous. Without hesitation, Suyu stepped forward and sucked the box into the Buddha bead. However, at that moment, a soft voice suddenly sounded near the formation. "Who is it?" Suyu was shocked. There was someone else at the bottom of the valley? His eyes flashed and turned into a pale white. Everything in the world was pierced by his eyes. Under the scanning of the soul eyes, Suyu was surprised to find that on the other side of the formation, there was another person hiding near the formation like him. It was a young woman in white. She was dressed in a snow-white robe. Her facial features were exquisite, and her figure was graceful. She was a great beauty. Her crystal-like eyes were filled with murderous intent. She looked coldly in the direction where Suyu was and bellowed. Suyu's eyes turned and slowly retreated. He had already obtained the box, so there was no need to compete with this mysterious woman. Humph! I've spent so much effort and sacrificed so many puppets to lure the ghost bats away. Do you really think you can steal my stuff just like that? It turned out that she was also here for the ancient god territory's civilization weapon blueprints that Dynasty had collected over the years. Heavenly, freezing rain. The white-robed woman's eyes were filled with killing intent. She waved her hand, and a shocking amount of cold air flew out from her sleeves. It turned into ice needles in the air and covered half of the bottom of the valley. They were densely packed as they shot down. It was impossible to fly in this place, and the speed of one's movement technique was also greatly hindered. Suyu couldn't avoid it, so he raised his arm, which was covered with pitch-black dragon scales. Ding, ding, ding. The ice hit his arm, creating a series of sparks. Over here, the white-clothed lady's eyes shone brightly. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of chilly air. The chilly air turned into numerous ice chains in the air, which attacked Suyu rapidly. A god at the level of a tribe king. Suyu's heart skipped a beat, and the silhouette of the ice goddess appeared behind him. He shouted, "Omnidirectional destruction." A wave of ice ripples swept out, freezing the space in front of him and slowing down the speed of the chains by several times. Seizing the opportunity, Suyu stepped on the cliff wall and left quickly, because he had already noticed that some ghost bats were rushing back. The commotion just now had already attracted them. The white-clothed lady was shocked. Omnidirectional destruction? This is the divine path of the Shui Nation's royal family of the North Territory. Only the members of the royal family can inherit it. Who are you? Suddenly, the white-clothed lady thought of someone, and her pretty face was filled with endless hatred. It's you, Suyu. You killed my brother, Shui Qingshun. In the whole world, there was only one person who was not a member of the Shui Nation's royal family, and that person was Suyu. Seeing that his identity had been exposed, Suyu didn't hide it anymore. He said calmly, "It was Princess Yongye who killed him. If you have a grudge against her, you can look for her." Ha! The white-clothed lady, who was Shui Qingshun's mother's elder sister, Shui Xiaoman, burst into crazy laughter. "I will get even with Yongye Chushue, but you are the culprit." Suyu shook his head helplessly. Why did she always put the blame on others? It was Shui Qingshun who was aggressive and tried to kill Suyu. Suyu shouldn't become a scarecrow and let Shui Qingshun kill him without fighting back. Ridiculous, Suyu said calmly. He didn't want to argue with this woman. So, he jumped up to the valley quickly. "You killed my brother and stole my blueprint. Now, you want to leave?" Shui Xiaoman sneered coldly. Then, a white silk made of frost hovered under her feet. Then, she flew up in the sky with Shui Xiaoman. No wonder she could hide at the bottom of the valley like Suyu. It turned out she had such an extraordinary treasure, which could resist the power of the myriad bone mountain and fly in the sky. After several breaths, Shui Xiaoman caught up with Suyu. Then, she shouted condescendingly, "Die." As she shook her wrists, a purple gold ring fell from each of her snow-white wrists. Then, the rings smashed toward Suyu like thunder from the nine heavens. Suyu fixed his eyes on Suyu. Then, a golden storm appeared on the surface of his body, which was caused by the rotating golden balls. The two purple gold rings collided with the golden storm. With a loud explosion, the powerful golden storm was broken by the power of the two purple gold rings. The 99 golden flames forbidden with beads scattered in all directions, killing several ghost bats along the way. Suyu's face changed slightly. What a powerful treasure! When the purple gold rings fell, Suyu waved his hand. Then, a puppet the size of a palm grew to a height of 1,000 feet and stood in front of Suyu. Crack! Along with several harsh sounds of friction, the deity-level puppet was pierced by the purple gold rings. However, Suyu took out a golden longbow and shot 3 arrows in a row. 2 arrows were aimed at the purple gold rings and 1 at Shui Xiaoman. Ding! Ding! After a moment of stalemate, the purple gold rings deflected the arrow of the golden flames forbidden wood. However, they lost their direction and flew out of the valley. Puff, puff, puff. Along the way, all the ghost bats were crushed into pieces by the purple gold rings. Shui Xiaoman was full of murderous intent. Great! You really have someone behind you. You can even block the Emperor-based Saint artifact of the Northern Shui Nation, the purple gold rings of Yin Yang. If I don't skin you alive and torture you to find out who is behind this, I will be ashamed to face the dead in the underworld. Yin and Yang integration. With a low shout, the two purple gold rings merged into one and turned into a ring in the shape of a Tai Chi in an instant. Su Yu felt extremely dangerous. Chapter 1343. Sensing the danger, the two hidden celestial energy spheres in Su Yu's body revolved quickly, and the accumulated divine power was instilled into the ice-blue divine armor on the surface of his body. When the armor wasn't activated, it could resist a strike from a tribe king-level god. If activated, it could withstand the attack of a level 4 deity. The surface of Su Yu's body emitted an ice-blue radiance, which was as magnificent as a dream. The purple gold rings of Yin and Yang of the Tai Chi ring spun and suddenly wrapped around Su Yu's body. At the same time, it rapidly contracted and crushed Su Yu's waist. However, the icy blue light on the surface of Su Yu's body flickered rapidly, blocking the violet gold rings of Yin Yang and preventing them from continuing to compress. It's Shangwan Feiyu's Ice God's armor. Shui Xiaoman's eyes narrowed, and her killing intent intensified. She quickly formed a seal with her hands. Immediately, the purple gold Yin Yang rings contracted even more intensely, forcing the icy blue divine light to retreat. Su Yu was secretly shocked. As expected, the joint attack of the Black Flame Immortal and the Thunderbolt Immortal was so dangerous that even the ice blue divine armor couldn't resist it completely. Without hesitation, Su Yu's eyes flickered, and two whiffs of gray fog filled the air. He then shouted, "Incubus Curse." As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible wave entered the void and swept through the surroundings. Shui Xiaoman had never expected a human like Su Yu to be proficient in sorcery. He was caught off guard and fell into a nightmare. However, his eyelids twitched rapidly as if he was about to wake up. Su Yu's eyes flashed, and he shot a long arrow of golden flames forbidden wood backhandedly. The long arrow was like a beam of light. In a breath's time, it had arrived in front of Shui Xiaoman's midbrows. It would pierce through her in the next moment. But right at this moment, a strand of vast Buddhist voice resounded from between Shui Xiaoman's brows. It was so loud that even the deaf could hear it, and it blocked one's heart. Under the influence of the sound waves, the arrow stopped in front of his glabella and kept swaying, as if it had encountered an unimaginable obstruction. At the same time, the Buddhist voice woke Shui Xiaoman up from her coma. A look of confusion flashed across Shui Xiaoman's eyes for a split second. Then, she was filled with shock and anger. She retreated frantically while taking out a snow-white ice sculpture feather. Celestial Snow Feather. Shui Xiaoman waved one of her hands, causing her feathers to flutter in the void. Gusts of frighteningly cold wind blew out from the feathers. The shaking golden flames forbidden wood arrow was finally blown off course by the cold wind after a moment of stalemate. The cold wind did not stop there. It uprooted the entire valley and blew it into the sky. If it was in a normal place, it wouldn't be surprising for a mountain to be sent flying. However, this was the Myriad Bone Mountain range, and it was impossible for even deity-level experts to fly. Yet a mountain had been sent flying. It was clear how strong the cold wind emitted by the feather was. Su Yu's heart skipped a beat. He had already retreated before the golden flame's forbidden wood was shot out. Even so, he was still scratched by the edge of the cold wind. The bone-piercing coldness invaded his body and froze his limbs, blood vessels, and divine power. He was sent flying by the strong wind and landed heavily on the mountainside. Rumble! A hole was smashed into the mountainside, and Su Yu fell into it along with the violet gold rings of Yin Yang. Shui Xiaoman flew over and stared at the hole with a surprised look on her face. The belly of the Myriad Bone Mountain is actually hollow. With a flash of cold light, Shui Xiaoman chased after him. What he saw was a bottomless black abyss that led straight to the bottom of the myriad bone mountain. Slowly closing her eyes, Xue Xiaoman sensed the position of the violet gold rings of yin yang and chased after them. After a full hour, Xue Xiaoman flew to the bottom of the abyss. He can't be alive after falling from such a high place, can he? Xue Xiaoman thought to herself, unless Suyu had the white silk of frost and could fly in the air like she did. At the bottom of the abyss was a vast expanse of white bones, scattered all around. Most of them showed signs of decay. The remains of the mortal fairy, Xue Xiaoman said placidly. She wasn't interested in rummaging through their remains. Instead, she fixed her crystal-like eyes on the central area at the bottom of the abyss. In her perception, Suyu was right there. Her beautiful figure flickered, and she rushed over at an extremely fast speed. What she saw was a mountain of white bones that was piled up 10,000 feet high. Complete, jade-like corpses were piled up together. Although they were covered in dust, they couldn't block out the boundless divine light. The superposition of the divinity left behind was extremely majestic. The white silk of frost around Xue Xiaoman swayed for a while. Disturbed, it couldn't carry Xue Xiaoman to continue flying. Xue Xiaoman landed hastily. Suddenly, a wave of heavy pressure hit her, making it difficult for her to walk. The pressure here was more than 10 times that of the outside of the mountain. Staring at the myriad bone mountain, Xue Xiaoman's crystal-like eyes shone with a fiery light. Could this be the tomb of all deities in the legendary myriad bone mountain? Xue Xiaoman was pleasantly surprised to find the tomb of all deities that the deities longed for. Aha, this is my good fortune. Xue Xiaoman couldn't help but chuckle. She opened the space storage, intending to collect the remains of all deities here. With their remains and legacies, the Xue nation of the Northern Territory will no longer be controlled by the Empire. We can replace them ourselves. However, there was a sudden movement in the sky, and she could vaguely hear voices. Finally, we've passed through the formation at the top of the mountain and entered the belly of the mountain. If the rumors are right, the tomb of all deities is at the bottom of the mountain. A sonorous voice reverberated in the empty belly of the mountain. Xue Xiaoman was slightly taken aback. As sharp as she was, she sensed that there were several people approaching, and one of them had a very powerful aura. With a flicker of her beautiful eyes, Xue Xiaoman entered the tomb of all deities in a flash. With the help of the chaotic divinity of the tomb of all deities, she perfectly concealed her aura. Swish, 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 swish. Several air-rending sounds came. Among them, 9 were level 6 deities, and only one was a level 5 deity, which was the level of a tribe leader. That person was dressed in animal skin, and his face was painted with colorful characters. His eyes were deep and fierce, full of primitive aura. He stared at the myriad bone mountain, and his eyes were burning with passion. The tomb of all deities, found it. A creature dressed in animal skin beside him said, "Congratulations, Grand Wizard. You've finally found the tomb of all deities. The saint will be very happy." The Grand Wizard nodded deeply, and his eyes were filled with greed. In the tomb of all deities, even if only 1/10 of the deities left their legacies, it would be enough to greatly increase the power of the saint and suppress the saint lady. Today we are all heroes. The creature dressed in animal skin was delighted, and he asked, "What about the 3 people of Black Mountain? Them? Humph. They haven't arrived yet. I'm being merciful by not condemning them." The Grand Wizard said discontentedly. He stared at the tomb of all deities in front of him and said, "Put away the bones of all deities immediately." Xue Xiaoman, who was in the bones, looked solemn. She was very familiar with the aura of the person who spoke. He was a wizard of the Moonwatch sect. Moreover, he was at the level of a Grand Wizard. The Moonwatch sect was strange and unpredictable. Few people of the same level as the creatures of the ancient god realm could defeat them one-on-one. What's more, there were 9 wizards following them. If she was really discovered by them, she might be in danger. Her heart sank, and Xue Xiaoman quietly drilled into the depths of the bones. Because of the interference of the divinity, she could no longer determine the location of the violet gold rings of yin yang. Suddenly, Shui Xiaoman touched something soft. She was a little surprised and instinctively thought it was the body of a deity whose body had not yet decayed. However, when she felt the warmth from the body, she realized that the bones were alive. You? Shui Xiaoman suddenly realized that it was Su Yu. Before she had time to scream, she was pressed down by two big hands. One hand covered her mouth tightly to stop her from making a sound, and the other hand pressed down on her body to prevent her from moving. Shui Xiaoman was taken aback. In the darkness, she could only see a pair of extraordinarily bright eyes staring at her. At this moment, a voice sounded in her mind, "If you don't want to die, shut up immediately." Shui Xiaoman's killing intent surged. However, when she thought of the 10 followers of the Moonwatch sect outside, her heart shuddered. Knowing that this was not the time to strike, she suppressed her killing intent, shook off Su Yu's hand, and stared at him coldly. "Why aren't you dead?" Shui Xiaoman asked through telepathy. Su did not answer. Shui Xiaoman frowned and was about to ask again. Suddenly, she was shocked. Pointing at Su Yu, she asked, "Where are the violet gold rings of yin yang?" At this moment, the violet gold rings of yin yang that bound Su Yu had disappeared. Only then did Su Yu reply expressionlessly, "Who knows? Maybe it fell on the way." "Nonsense." Shui Xiaoman's eyebrows were full of murderous intent. She said angrily, "I clearly sense that the violet gold rings of yin yang fell into the tomb of all deities with you." Su Yu said, "Then why don't you look for them? Why are you asking me?" Shui Xiaoman sneered. "I mean, you hid the violet gold rings of yin yang. Hand them over now." After a moment of silence, Su Yu took out a Tai Chi-shaped violet gold ring. It was the emperor-based saint artifact of the Xuan nation in the North Territory. Seeing this, Shui Xiaoman sneer deepened. "I'll deal with you later." She had some doubts in her mind. How on earth did Su Yu break free from the violet gold rings? However, since the violet gold rings were back, it didn't matter. She reached out and took the violet gold rings into her palm. However, the moment she touched the violet gold rings, Shui Xiaoman's expression changed dramatically. She couldn't sense the breath of the royal family of the Xuan nation in the violet gold rings of yin yang. This ring had been baptized by the divine blood of the northern Xuan nation's county kings, and it had been passed down for generations. As long as one carried the royal bloodline, one could activate it with the power of the bloodline. But now, the breath of the royal bloodline in the violet gold rings of yin yang had completely disappeared. Amidst the shock, Shui Xiaoman realized where she was. Could it be that the divinity of this place was so strong that the breath of the royal family was concealed? Her doubts were gradually dispelled. With a flip of her palm, Shui Xiaoman put away the violet gold rings of yin yang. Turning her pretty eyes, she continued to stare at Su Yu. "Tell me, how did you survive? And how did you break free from the violet gold rings?" Su Yu was expressionless, looking like he couldn't be bothered to answer. Shui Xiaoman's face was filled with murderous intent. However, under such circumstances, she really didn't dare to make a move, because the wizards outside had begun to collect the remains of the deities. Any movement from her would be detected. Having no time to deal with Su Yu, Shui Xiaoman flipped her palm, took out the divine feather of frost, and pinched it between her fingers. Her petite body tightened, and her eyes were fixed on Su Yu like a cheater ready to strike a fatal blow at its enemy. As more and more deities' remains were collected outside, they were gradually exposed. Chapter 1344. Whoosh! Suddenly, a terrifying cold wind attacked without any warning. The 10 wizards who were collecting the gods' remains outside were caught off guard. They were blown away and smashed into the stone wall of the mountain. A pile of gods' remains was also blown away and scattered in all directions. The 2 unlucky wizards were pierced through by the god's skeleton and died. The other 7 magi were also injured in the sudden riot. Only the Grand Wizard was surrounded by a dark gray fog that repelled all the corpses that came crashing into him. After a short moment of surprise, the Grand Wizard looked around with a fierce look in his eyes. He suddenly raised his head and stared at the stone wall. A white-clothed woman made use of the time when the remains of the deities were scattered to rush out and climbed up the stone wall, trying to escape. "1,000-ton spell," the Grand Wizard said. An invisible wave swept out from his mouth. Xue Xiaoman suddenly felt her body become 10 times heavier, and she fell from the stone wall with a scream. Even so, she still rolled on the ground nimbly and stood up unscathed. Without thinking, she waved the divine feather of frost. Another strange and frightening cold wind blew. But before the wind blew over, the Grand Wizard shouted, "Wind, calming spell." What made Xue Xiaoman's face fall was that the cold wind disappeared without a trace after the spell's ripples passed. Sorcery had always been strange, so Xue Xiaoman was not surprised. She looked around at the scattered gods' remains and found that the gathered divinity was much weaker. She immediately took out the white silk of frost and circled it under her feet. She quickly rose into the air and tried to fly away. The Grand Wizard smiled coldly. "Sky-forbidding spell." Xue Xiaoman, who was flying, lost her footing and fell from the sky. She staggered and said angrily, "Moonwatch sect, what are you going to do? If you really want to fight, don't blame me for being rude." The Grand Wizard sneered. "Outsider, let me see how rude you are." Just as he finished speaking, the Grand Warlock opened his mouth and shouted, "Soul-fixing spell." At the same time, the 7 surviving sorcerers shouted in unison, "Soul-fixing incantation." 8 obscure ripples swept across Xue Xiaoman. In an instant, Xue Xiaoman felt as if her soul was frozen, and her eyes gradually lost focus. Seizing this opportunity, the Grand Wizard opened his mouth and shouted, "God-slaying curse." A wave of frigid and deadly aura swept toward Xue Xiaoman. At the critical moment, Xue Xiaoman's glabella emitted a bright Buddhist light, rippling with a Buddhist voice that could shake one's soul. Not only was the soul-fixing mantra in Xue Xiaoman's body dispelled, but the ripples of the soul-killing mantra were also neutralized by the Buddha's voice. Xue Xiaoman came to her senses in an instant. Her face was filled with thick, murderous intent. "Good. Since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Xue Xiaoman produced a delicate object the size of a palm. It was an exquisite peacock. The peacock's tail spread out magnificently, emitting a dazzling radiance. Each feather had a sparkling ring pattern on it. Tossing it into the air, the little peacock floated in the air, dozens of circular patterns on its feathers aimed at the Grand Wizard. The Grand Shaman who was sneering a moment ago, in the blink of an eye, revealed fear, exclaimed out loud, "The outsider's civilized weapon, peacock plume?" The other shamans were so frightened that they hurriedly retreated. As far as they could remember, during the first great battle with the foreign invaders, they, who were initially victorious, suffered a crushing defeat after the outsiders sacrificed a large number of civilized weapons. To be precise, it was a one-sided massacre. After these weapons were activated, witchcraft could not affect them at all. Moreover, the shaman's defense was far inferior to that of the outsiders who used divine spells. Therefore, they were defenseless against the civilized weapons. In that war, even Yin Wu, who was at level 2, was killed by the civilized weapons. What killed him was none other than the existence known as the peacock plume. Xue Xiaoman was extremely distressed. This peacock plume was one of the few remaining items in the god domain. Moreover, it was severely damaged and not as powerful as it was in the past. It was only enough to kill deities at the level of tribal kings. She had originally planned to use it after encountering Yongya Wuheng as a life-saving talisman, but she was forced to use it now. With an eerie fury, Xue Xiaoman uttered a single word coldly, "Kill." In an instant, dozens of circular patterns shot out shocking divine light, shooting straight at the Grand Wizard. After getting rid of him, the remaining few shamans were nothing to worry about. As the divine light struck, the Grand Wizard was horrified and broke out in a cold sweat. Without thinking, he hurriedly cast spells. Transposition spell. Instantly, the Grand Wizard disappeared from where he was and was replaced by another shaman not far away. Before this shaman could react, he was pierced by a ray of divine light, and his body and soul were destroyed. The divine light did not give up after failing to hit its target. It continued to shoot out a second ray, aiming closely at the Grand Wizard. The Grand Wizard's expression changed drastically, and he cast the transposition spell again. Another shaman was swept over and crushed into dust in an instant. The rest of the shamans finally panicked. They distanced themselves from the Grand Wizard and kept begging for mercy. "Grand Wizard, spare us. Please spare us." However, the Grand Wizard only cared about his own life. How could he care about them? One after another, the shamans were crushed and killed. When the Grand Wizard was the only one left, he could no longer avoid them. He gritted his teeth and took out a wooden statue. It was a statue with 3 heads and 6 arms. It had a dignified expression and was filled with a boundless, domineering aura. "Wizard ancestor, show yourself." The moment the light shot over, the Grand Wizard suddenly shouted. The wooden statue immediately burst into flames and turned into a dark gray mist. The mist dissipated into nothingness. Immediately, an obscure wave swept across the surroundings. The peacock plume was swept by the wave, and the divine power within it was stripped away in an instant. Without the divine power to sustain it, the peacock plume stopped functioning. The Grand Wizard had a chance to catch his breath. Without thinking, he immediately activated his shaman power. Flying bird spell. The dark gray shaman power condensed into a pair of wings on his back. Unaffected by the divine power, they shot straight into the sky and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Shui Xiaoman waved in the air and summoned the peacock plume back. Looking at the dim divine light of the peacock plume, her pretty face was filled with anger. "I can't believe I didn't manage to kill all of them after such a huge loss." She did not think that killing 9 god-level shamans in an instant was a big deal. Then, she grabbed her wrist and sucked the 9 shaman storage rings over. After checking them, her expression softened a little. "But at least I didn't lose the myriad deities' remains. I can go back and report on my mission." Although Shui Xiaoman was overjoyed, she would not forget another important matter. Turning around coldly, Shui Xiaoman's pretty eyes stared at Su Yu, who stood rooted to the ground and didn't dare to move. She sneered. "Are you disappointed that I wasn't killed by the Moonwatch sect?" Su Yu was unexpectedly calm. He shook his head and said, "No. If you were killed by the Moonwatch sect, I would be very troubled too. Judging from their style of doing things, they don't look like they would let an outsider like me go. You are very clear about this. Regardless of whether I win or lose, you won't escape death." Shui Xiaoman smiled. Her face suddenly turned cold and murderous. "If that's the case, go and be buried with my brother." With a shift of thought, Shui Xiaoman took out the divine feather of frost and was ready to activate it. However, right at that moment, a sudden change occurred. The violet gold rings of Yin-Yang flew out of Shui Xiaoman's sleeves. They buzzed in the air as if they were struggling. Shui Xiaoman was taken aback. "What's going on? Are the treasures out of control?" Clang! The struggling violet gold rings of Yin-Yang finally came to a halt. The cicadas chirped, and they instantly wrapped themselves around Shui Xiaoman's body. Shui Xiaoman was caught off guard. How could she be wary of her own treasures? Just like that, she was subdued. As the violet gold rings of Yin-Yang tightened, her arms trembled, and the divine feather of frost between the fingers of her right hand fell. It drifted into the air and was easily caught by a palm. Shui Xiaoman looked up and saw Su Yu's eerily calm face. In an instant, she understood what had happened. She yelled in shock and anger. "It's you? You did something to the violet gold rings of Yin-Yang?" Su Yu acted as if he hadn't heard it, and he looked at the divine feather of frost with great interest. He muttered, "What a great treasure! What a great treasure! This should also be an Emperor-based Saint artifact. To be able to get 2 of them in one day is really a great opportunity." Shui Xiaoman gritted her teeth. "Let me go." At that moment, Su Yu looked at her and said with a faint smile, "Princess Shui, you must be joking. Let you go, and then wait for you to kill me?" Looking at the violet gold rings of Yin-Yang that imprisoned her tightly, Su Yu smiled deeply. He had fallen from the bottomless abyss. Of course, he had fallen to his death. However, with the realm of life and resurrection. Su Yu had been resurrected. As for the violet gold rings of Yin Yang, of course, the blood of the royal family of the Shui nation of the North Territory was removed with the Milky Way star sand and Su Yu's blood. The violet gold rings of Yin Yang had changed owners long before Shui Xiaoman caught up with him. Due to the existence of the tomb of all deities, Su Yu's remaining scent was disturbed. Therefore, Shui Xiaoman was able to keep the rings without her knowing. Su Yu had been waiting for an opportunity, and this was undoubtedly the best one. Shui Xiaoman was so angry that her face was full of murderous intent. Her eyes kept rolling, and she said in a low voice, "You don't look like someone who dares not to kill me because of my identity." Of course, if Su Yu was afraid of the Shui nation of the North Territory, he wouldn't have killed Shui Qingchen. But we can make a deal. Shui Xiaoman looked at the divine feather of frost in Su Yu's palm and felt extremely distressed. "I can teach you how to use this item in exchange for letting me go and returning the violet gold rings of Yin Yang to me. Otherwise, you won't get any of it." Su Yu rubbed his chin and looked her up and down. Shui Xiaoman's hair stood on end, as if she had realized something. She blushed and said with hatred, "Don't touch me. I have a fiancé, and he's someone you can't afford to provoke. Even the Shui nation of the North Territory doesn't dare to disrespect him." Unexpectedly, Su Yu didn't care at all. He said, "I don't think I need to make a deal with you. I have my own ways to manipulate the divine feather of frost. Besides, you obviously have more good stuff on you." As he spoke, Su Yu reached out and sucked Shui Xiaoman towards him. She struggled and resisted, but she couldn't resist the restraint of the violet gold rings of Yin Yang. After sizing her up, Su Yu extended his palm and delved into her perky breasts. Shui Xiaoman's face was flushed, and she screamed, "Stop!" Su Yu, on the other hand, continued to fondle her breasts. His big hand went all the way down through the undergarment until he felt a pendant. Shui Xiaoman was furious and ashamed, but when she noticed Su Yu had taken out the peacock plume, her face changed. "Stop! You can't take it away." Chapter 1345. As he spoke, a cold light flashed in Su Yu's eyes, and he pointed a finger at his head. However, a beam of Buddhist light suddenly rose from between his brows and protected his entire body. Su Yu was bounced away forcefully. Buddha aura again. Su Yu looked at the space between its brows. This was the third time that he had witnessed its might. Not only could it defend against soul attacks, but it seemed like it could also defend against physical attacks. With a thought, Su Yu activated the violet gold rings of Yin Yang to tighten their grip. However, the Buddhist light was extremely tough and didn't budge at all. Its defensive power was even more astonishing than the ice blue divine armor. Shui Xiaoman sneered. "This is what my fiancé gave me, the Emperor Buddha Jade. Unless you're a level 3 deity, you can't do anything to me." Su Yu tried several other methods, including using the golden flames forbidden with arrow, but couldn't shake the Buddha's light at all. Su Yu furrowed his brows and gave up on trying. Firstly, he had to be wary of the great wizard returning. Secondly, he had completed his mission and had to leave as soon as possible. "I can't kill you, but I can still plunder everything from your body," Su Yu said. His murderous intent vanished, and his palm passed through the Buddha's light easily. This Buddhist light would only react to danger and hostility. If there was no killing intent, it would not be affected. "What are you going to do?" Shui Xiaoman exclaimed. Starting from his neck, Su Yu searched all over his body. Any hidden spaces or storage rings were found by Su Yu without missing a single one. Shui Xiaoman was touched all over her body. She was angry and embarrassed, but she couldn't move. She could only let Su Yu do whatever he wanted. In the end, everything was taken by Su Yu, which caused her to be filled with hatred. She glared at Su Yu with a flushed face and gnashed her teeth. "Su, unless you can trap me here forever, I'll kill you even if you flee to the ends of the earth." Shui Xiaoman said hatefully. Su Yu looked at her calmly and said, "You have reminded me of something. I must find a way to trap you for some time. Otherwise, if you catch up with me, I will be troubled." As he spoke, Su Yu extended his hand and tore off her dress. He didn't even leave her undergarment behind. A perfect, jade-like body appeared in front of him in the most natural way. Coupled with that exquisite face, it would cause one's blood to boil. Nice figure. Suyu glanced at her voluptuous bosom and smiled as he took out the white silk and tried to instill his divine energy into it. The white silk revolved around Suyu's feet, and he slowly flew up the cliff and back to the outside of the mountain. At that moment, Suyu had a thought and recalled the violet gold rings of Enyang. Xue Xiaoman's face was as red as a sheet of cloth. Her pretty eyes were almost watery from embarrassment. Once she was free, she ran along the cliff wall, exuding boundless anger and shame. Su, Feather, I want you. She had just finished speaking when Suyu interrupted her. I'm sorry, I don't want you. If you can't quench your thirst, please find someone else. I don't care for naked women who throw themselves at me. After saying that, a large number of rocks fell, and the belly of the mountain collapsed. Xue Xiaoman let out a shrill cry as she was smashed back to the bottom of the abyss by a few rocks. After retrieving the violet gold rings of Enyang, Suyu smiled and flew down the mountain quickly on the white silk. 10 days later, in the belly of the collapsed mountain, a woman shrouded in divine light crawled out with great difficulty. From the vague fluctuations, one could see the amazing snow-white scenery. Suyu, Xue Xiaoman gritted her teeth. She had never suffered such a setback and humiliation in her life. The blueprint was snatched from her hands. The tomb of all deities was snatched from her hands. The emperor-based saint artifact of the Xuan nation in the North Territory was snatched from her. The life-saving treasure, the peacock plume, that she had kept for many years, was snatched from her. The virgin body that she had kept for so many years was touched by someone. In the end, she was stripped naked and thrown into the mountain. Thinking of this, Xue Xiaoman felt like killing herself. I won't let you go. I swear. Xue Xiaoman was filled with hatred. In Xue Xiaoman's eyes, this evil thief, who was extremely ferocious and evil, was currently in a hidden ruin, taking inventory of the harvest from the myriad bone mountain. He had learned simple sorcery. He had obtained the blueprint that he had dreamed of. He had robbed Xue Xiaoman of all her treasures. He had also obtained the tomb of all deities. It was not suitable to look at the blueprint now. However, it took Suyu 10 days and 10 nights to finish dealing with Xue Xiaoman's treasures. The violet gold rings of Enyang had been completely refined. They would no longer struggle against Suyu's will. Suyu found a way to activate the divine feather of frost from Xue Qingqian's soul memory. Suyu also refined the peacock plume for his own use. The only difficult thing to deal with was the remains of all deities. There were so many remains, and their legacies were extremely messy. Suyu spent 10 days digesting the legacies of hundreds of deities and obtained their divine paths. It would take a long time for him to digest the rest of the legacies. With a thought, hundreds of virtual shadows of deities appeared behind Suyu. They were so dense that they filled a corner of the sky. If outsiders saw this, they would be so shocked that their tongues would drop. After taking a light breath, Suyu left the ruins. Now that his goal had been achieved, it was time to leave the ice-sealed river bottom and study the blueprint of the World Annihilation Plate replica. The way to leave the ruins was to go to the central area where each region was located. There's also a staircase that could be transported back to the bottom of the river by standing on it. After identifying the direction, Suyu flew away. 5 days later, in the central area of the Devil Realm, Suyu stopped when he was millions of miles away. He was very vigilant and didn't walk over. Instead, he observed from afar with the transparent eye. As expected, Suyu found something unusual. Many unidentified deities were hiding at the staircase. They were all emitting the aura of the Grand Wizard. They were all from the Moonwatch sect. There were 12 of them in total. They were guarding the staircase firmly. Even an ant couldn't break in. Apart from 8 ordinary 6th heaven sorcerers, the rest were all 5th heaven great sorcerers. What surprised Suyu more was that one of the 4 Grand Wizards was the Grand Wizard of the Myriad Bone Mountain. Suyu was shocked. He didn't think the Moonwatch sect was guarding the exit of the Devil Realm to send them off. It was more likely that they were sending them to the Western Paradise. All of a sudden, The Grand Wizard whom Suyu had met opened his eyes abruptly and glanced in Suyu's direction with extreme vigilance. Suyu immediately stopped using the transparent eye and quickly hid his aura. After a few breaths, the three Grand Wizards rushed over. Wu Tong, are you sure you sensed that someone was here? A Grand Wizard with a face full of scars looked around suspiciously. Another Grand Wizard also cast a doubtful look. They didn't sense the presence of any living beings. Wu Tong was the Grand Wizard that Suyu had seen before. He was also surprised at the moment. It's impossible. I did sense a soul probing. The two Grand Wizards sneered. What a coincidence. Only you sensed it, but the three of us didn't? Could it be that you messed up and deliberately put on a show to prevent the Holy Sun from blaming you? Wu Tong frowned. I admit, I did make a mistake. I will not avoid the punishment I deserve. There is no need to do this. Huh? The two Grand Wizards sneered and turned back to the staircase. Wu Tong gazed around and turned back to the staircase. The Grand Wizard who stood guard on the staircase had a mark of a golden flame between his brows. The three Grand Wizards were obviously wary of him. This time, we must carry out the task that the Holy Sun gave us. We must capture the Prince and Princess of the Empire of Darkness alive and use them as bargaining chips in exchange for territory, the leading Grand Wizard said. Wu Tong said, apart from the Saint Realm, the staircase to the Devil Realm, and the Mortal Realm have been occupied by the Moonwatch sect. Unless the other party is a level 4 deity, there is no way they can escape. Lord Wu Wan can rest assured about this. As he spoke, Wu Tong's pupils suddenly shrank. In the sky, he suddenly saw a huge eye hanging in the sky. It was pale white and looked at them coldly. There is an enemy spying on us. Wu Tong cried out involuntarily, pointing to the sky. The three Grand Wizards looked in the direction of his finger, but saw nothing. Wu Tong was stunned. It disappeared. The other two Grand Wizards sneered. He really is crazy. Chief Wu Wan also looked at Wu Tong thoughtfully and continued to discuss the secret. Just then, Wu Tong saw another eye hanging in the sky. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Wu Wan and the other two Grand Wizards noticed his strange behavior and looked in the direction of his gaze. Still, there was nothing. Wu Tong, are you done? The two Grand Wizards were displeased. Wu Tong said, aggrieved, I really saw it. Wu Wan's face was also a little displeased. Enough. Don't do it more than 3 times. Wu Tong, I'm warning you for the last time. Wu Tong opened his mouth. At that moment, he began to suspect that he was hallucinating because he had not fully recovered from his injuries. Right at that moment, another eye appeared in the sky. This time, Wu Tong wisely chose to ignore it. He thought to himself, hallucination, it's just an illusion. Don't mind it. Suyu, who was thousands of miles away, heard their entire conversation. When they were done, Suyu retracted his soul eye and frowned deeply. The exits of the Mortal Realm and the Devil Realm have been occupied? This is troublesome. If it had only been one Grand Wizard, Suyu, who had so many treasures, could have tried to force a breakthrough. But there were 4 of them, and the one named Wu Wan was the most powerful leader. If Suyu tried rashly, it would be extremely risky. After a moment of contemplation, Suyu's eyes locked on the deepest part of the Saint Realm. Only deities could set foot there, and it was the only place where the exit was not sealed. Stepping on the tip of his foot, Suyu decided to explore the Saint Realm. Half a month later, Suyu passed through the Devil Realm and arrived at the border between the Devil Realm and the God Realm. The Saint Realm was shrouded in mist, and eerie, ghostly cries could be vaguely heard, sending shivers down anyone's spine. As soon as Suyu stepped into the Saint Realm, he felt uncomfortable, as if he was being watched. He tried to take a few steps inside, but the feeling of being watched was still there. All of a sudden, a black liquid shot out from the mist and sprayed directly at Suyu's face. Suyu dodged sideways and easily dodged the black liquid. The liquid landed on the ground and immediately corroded the ground with a sizzling sound. The poisonous gas it emitted was also extremely corrosive. Even Suyu felt waves of pain and had to dodge. Chapter 1346. Judging from the exposed, jade-like remains, they should have been deity-level strong men when they were alive. 5. Book net. However, for some reason, the deity-level creatures, who had been dead for countless years, not only did not decay completely, but they could still walk in the fog. Their eyes were white, and there was no vitality in their bodies. There was only a cloud of fog hovering between their eyebrows. The black liquid was spurted from their mouths. The rotten corpse's throat uttered a strange syllable as it opened its mouth again to spit out a mouthful of pitch-black poisonous fog. Suyu snorted coldly. As he dodged, he took out several golden flames forbidden with beads and shot them out. The rotten corpse was pierced, but did not fall. Instead, it continued to spit black fog at Suyu. Suyu's eyes flashed. He held an arrow in his hand and shot in the air. The sharp golden flames forbidden would arrow easily cut off the corpse's neck. As a head rolled down, a black shadow the size of a thumb quickly jumped out of its neck. After landing on the ground, it immediately drilled into the ground. Humph! Suyu stepped on the ground with his toes, and the ground cracked. The resulting energy shook the black shadow that drilled into the ground out. Taking a closer look, it was actually a pitch-black insect. It had a human face, but its body was in the shape of a centipede, which was extremely strange. At this moment, a pair of eyes were staring at Suyu with hatred, and its mouth was shouting vaguely, "Kill all of you! Kill all of you!" Suyu's eyes flashed coldly, and he stabbed it to death with an arrow. A lot of black liquid, like the one just now, splashed out from its abdomen. This worm controls the corpse? Suyu thought secretly. This sanctuary was really strange and extraordinary. At this moment, another sharp wind pierced through the fog and went straight to Suyu. Suyu thought it was another corpse like this one, and his figure flashed as he prepared to avoid it. However, the sharp wind suddenly changed direction and went straight to Suyu. Suyu was shocked, and the long arrow in his hand shot out without thinking. It broke through the incoming attack and shot towards the source of the wind. Clang! To Suyu's surprise, the sound of metal clashing rang out. It was not a rotten corpse. Who is it? The other party seemed to find something wrong and shouted in a low voice. Suyu stared and swept away the fog in front of him, revealing an empty area with a radius of 1,000 feet. Suddenly, a figure in a sorry state appeared in front of him. "Are you Commander Shangwan's subordinate?" The other party found Suyu's face familiar, and after muttering to himself for a moment, he suddenly remembered Suyu. Suyu retrieved the long arrow and looked at the man, who was covered in blood and festering all over. He frowned and said, "You are a prince of the royal family, right? Didn't you all teleport to the sanctuary? Why are you at the border of the sanctuary?" This person was one of the 5 princes sent by the imperial sacred sect. Hearing this, he was overjoyed. "What? I'm already at the edge of the sacred domain. Great, I'm saved. Get out of the way." Overjoyed, the prince charged out of the holy domain and arrived at the fiend domain. He really came out. The prince's face was filled with joy, as if he had just survived a disaster. After confirming that it was safe, the prince turned to look at Suyu and raised the long whip in his hand. "Your name is Su something, right? From now on, you are under this prince's command. Now, accompany me to the exit of the demon domain. We need to leave this place." Suyu looked at him with cold eyes. Without saying a word, he turned around and headed towards the depths of the sanctuary. "How dare you? How dare you disobey my orders?" The prince said unhappily, "Don't think you are so great just because you defeated Xue Qingchen. In front of us deities, you are even weaker than an ant." As a member of the imperial family, it was not a secret that he knew Suyu had defeated Xue Qingchen. Suyu turned to look at him and said calmly, "It's not that I don't want to obey your orders. I just don't want to die. The exits of the mortal realm and the devil realm are occupied by the people of the Moonwatch sect. Each exit is guarded by at least 4 level 5 deities. If you want to die, I won't accompany you." "What? The Moonwatch sect is also here?" The prince was shocked. It seemed he didn't doubt Suyu's words, because he had also met the people of the Moonwatch sect in the sanctuary. His expression changed several times. Then he said quickly, "The ice-sealed river bottom is only open for 2 months. After 2 months, the cold wave will come again. If we can't leave in time, we will be trapped in the ruins for 100 years. If the mortal realm and the devil realm are occupied, we can't pass through them. Does that mean we have to go back to the center of the sanctuary? The prince murmured to himself. When he mentioned the center of the sanctuary, his face changed as if he had experienced some horrible things there. Then, he made up his mind and shouted, "Sue something, wait for me." As he spoke, he leaped into the dense fog and quickly caught up with Suyu. He sized him up and let out a strange laugh. "You were able to block my attack, which means that your strength isn't bad. If you follow me, I can guarantee your survival. Otherwise, you won't survive long in the Saint Realm, which is filled with lost people." Lost people? Does he mean those rotten corpses? Compared to the prince, Suyu obviously didn't know the sanctuary as well as the prince. After thinking for a while, Suyu nodded his head calmly. "Then, please lead the way, your highness," the prince said with a smile. "You are as arrogant as ever. No wonder you don't take Shui Qingchen seriously. You even treat me like this. Forget it. I am a generous man and won't argue with you. As long as you follow my instructions, everything will be fine." The prince shrugged his shoulders. "I am Yongya Wuming. Although I'm not as powerful as Yongya Wuheng among the young princes, don't underestimate me. The ordinary deities are no match for the deities of the royal family." So you said expressionlessly, "Okay, I see." Hiss. Yongya Wuming's mouth twitched. "Your expression really gives me the urge to beat you up." Staring at Suyu with dissatisfaction, Yongya Wuming said, "Now, let's go to the center of the sanctuary. Before that, I need to remind you of one thing." "What?" Suyu looked at him. "Hide your scent, especially the fluctuations of your energy. The lost people are most sensitive to the fluctuations of energy. They can sense it even from thousands of miles away." "Is that so?" Suyu thought of the lost people he met for the first time. At that time, he was vigilant and his body surface surged with defensive power, which attracted the lost people. "In that case, we can live in peace." "The sanctuary is too simple," Suyu said thoughtfully. Yongya Wuming chuckled. "It's not as simple as you think. The sanctuary is full of danger, and the lost people are not the only ones hiding in the fog. There are also ferocious deity-level beasts. If you encounter them, can you avoid them without using your power?" Suyu blinked. "Can't we just kill them and leave quickly?" Yongya Wuming choked, and the blue veins on his forehead bulged. "Are you kidding me? If I had that kind of ability, would I need to escape from the sanctuary?" "That's not dangerous," Suyu muttered to himself. When Yongya Wuming heard this, he rolled his eyes again. "Even Yongya Wuheng doesn't dare to talk big like that. You are really arrogant. Okay, stop bragging. Come with me." We just revealed the fluctuations of energy here, and soon, the lost people will rush over. The two of them quickly disappeared into the fog. Soon, as Yongya Wuming expected, several lost people appeared. However, what he did not expect was that it was not just the lost people who appeared. There were also 4 stalwart figures. The one in the lead was a young man in black who emitted a terrible aura. His eyes were evil and cold, giving people a sense of extreme danger. The lost people nearby felt such an obvious aura. Instead of rushing over, they retreated in fear and hid in the fog, not daring to show themselves. Behind the young man, there were 3 figures. So you would definitely recognize them if you were here. They were none other than the Arrow Slave, the Black Flame Immortal, and the Thunder Immortal. There was no doubt about the identity of the young man. The creatures of the ancient god realm of 9 dragons are still so fond of fancy things. Even a relic is so complicated. No wonder the master destroyed it so easily. The 3 people behind him looked at each other. What ancient god realm of 9 dragons? What fancy things? Let's go. We're catching up with that kid. The young man smiled coldly. Half a month later. At this time, the relic was nearing the end of its duration. A faint chill gradually filled the relic. After half a month, Suyu and Yongya Wuming finally arrived at the center of the sanctuary. Tsk tisk, it's really strange. When I escaped, there were dangerous, ferocious beasts and lost people everywhere. Why didn't I see anything when I came back? Yongye Wuming looked confused. He couldn't help but look at Suyu. Do you think I scare them away? Suyu smiled and said nothing. The reason why they did not encounter any danger was that Suyu had used his soul eyes to explore in advance and eliminate all hidden dangers in advance. Otherwise, several of the ferocious beasts were at the level of tribe leaders. Suyu might not have survived, but this prince would most likely have died. Could it be that Yongye Wuheng and his sister killed all the ferocious beasts in the vicinity? Yongye Wuming thought about it, and felt that this was the only possibility. On the way, Suyu had asked him about the reason why they were separated. It seemed that the little saint lady of the Moonwatch sect had appeared. The 5 of them from the Imperial Sacred faction were no match for her, so they split up and fled. We are almost at the center of the sanctuary. I wonder if the 2 of them have excavated that creation-level civilization weapon, Yongye Wuming muttered. However, just as he finished muttering, an invisible wave suddenly appeared in the air. Yongye Wuming suddenly realized something and exclaimed, "Oh no, it's the witchcraft of the Moonwatch sect." In the blink of an eye, Yongye Wuming threw out a strange talisman, which exploded in the air, making a series of low explosions. Those formless fluctuations disappeared amidst the sound of the explosion. "Boy, let's split up and run." Yongye Wuming took out a talisman and threw it to Suyu. He said quickly, "Good luck." As he spoke, he moved his feet and was about to escape. However, at this moment, a wave that was almost tangible suddenly came. Soul-fixing spell. Yongye Wuming's face changed dramatically, and he was shocked. Grand Wizard. He crushed a talisman, but it could only offset part of the wave. With a painful groan, Yongye Wuming was frozen. Swish! The mist parted, and 3 people of the Moonwatch sect walked out. The leader was a Grand Wizard. Looking at Yongye Wuming, he sighed in disappointment. I thought it was the first prince who had returned. Take him away and let the little saint lady deal with him. Suddenly, the Grand Wizard glanced at Suyu, who was still standing on the side, and said lightly, "Take him too." However, what caused him to be terrified was that Suyu revealed a calm smile. Chapter 1347. A faintly discernible ripple surrounded Suyu, and it was extremely obscure. At this moment, the Grand Wizard noticed the existence of the invisible wave. He stared at it and said in surprise, "Wizard power. You are." Suyu's eyes shone brightly. With a solemn expression, he said calmly, "I am a wizard under the Holy Sun, Heishan." The Grand Wizard and the 2 wizards looked at him suspiciously. Yongye Wuming, after a moment of surprise, understood Suyu's intention. He thought to himself, this boy is quite quick-witted. His reaction is so fast. Yongye Wuming did not doubt Suyu's identity. If Suyu was a disciple of the Moonwatch sect, Shengwan Feiyu would have noticed it. Obviously, Suyu had used some method to disguise himself as a disciple of the Moonwatch sect. The Grand Wizard's eyes narrowed slightly. The Holy Sun is far away in the Lost Nation. When did he send someone here? Capture him and hand him over to the little holy maiden. Seeing that the 2 were aggressive, Suyu remained calm and said leisurely, "The black water covers the green mountains, and the silver river illuminates the white sun." Hearing this, the Grand Wizard still had doubts. "The slogan is correct, but I don't know how many sorcery you have learned." Suyu smiled and looked at the 2 wizards, who were stunned. He muttered an obscure spell. The invisible wave swept over, and the 2 wizards fell into a dream. They were confused on the spot. The curse of Incubus. The Grand Wizard nodded slowly, confirming Suyu's identity. It is indeed the 9 sorcery of the Holy Sun. Only the Holy Sun can learn it. Unlike the divine path, the practice of sorcery required faith. Some powerful sorcery could only be comprehended through faith in the wizard ancestor. So far, in the Moonwatch sect, the only person who had comprehended the curse of Incubus was the Holy Sun. If others wanted to learn this sorcery, they could only be taught by the Holy Sun. Therefore, Suyu's identity was beyond doubt. Suyu smiled. Of course, the slogan was obtained from the memory of the witch. As for the curse of Incubus, the wizard tribe probably would not understand that there was a magical power in the world that could imitate the power of blood. "Greetings, Grand Wizard." I have come to see the Holy Maiden on the order of Lord Wutong. Suyu had learned from the conversation of the four Grand Wizards that the Moonwatch sect was not united. The Saint and the Saintess seemed to be in a competitive relationship. Among the disciples of the Moonwatch sect who entered the relic this time, the Saint was in charge of the Devil area, while the Saint was in charge of the Holy area. The Grand Warlock in front of him should be an expert of the Saintess faction. The Saintess has gone to hunt down 2 level 3 ancient god realm god-level creatures. If there's anything important, I can pass it on to you. The Grand Wizard naturally revealed a cold expression, so he was put in a difficult position. This is related to the failure of the Myriad Bone Mountain. Since the Saint Lady is not here, I will go back and report to her. Wait. The Grand Wizard's eyes flashed. You didn't manage to retrieve the remains of the 10,000 deities? Suyu nodded and cupped his fists. Farewell. Wait. The Grand Wizard's expression softened. Since you're here, you might as well rest in the central area until the ruins are over. Besides, I think the Holy Maiden will be back soon. This was exactly what Suyu wanted, and he said, all right. The Grand Shaman said, may I know the specifics of the Myriad Bone Mountain first? He knew very well that the remains of the 10,000 deities were highly valued by the Moonwatch sect leader, so he did not hesitate to hand them over to the Holy Sun. However, the Holy Sun was in seclusion, so it was up to the wizards under his command to handle it. If this task failed, the blow to the Holy Sun could not be underestimated. Therefore, his attitude changed drastically, and he became enthusiastic about Suyu. It's better to wait for the Saint Lady to come back and tell her in person. There are some secrets that only the Saint Lady knows. The Grand Wizard was slightly disappointed, but it was not appropriate to ask further. He nodded and said, well, come with me. At this time, the 2 wizards said, my lord, what should we do with this creature? The Grand Wizard looked at Yongya Wuming, then at Suyu, and frowned slightly, meaning to ask why Suyu was with the people of the Imperial Sacred Faction. Suyu had an idea and said, I met this person on the way. He was lost in the fog and mistook me for a creature of the ancient god realm, so I played along and lured him back. I see. The Grand Wizard did not suspect anything. After thinking for a while, he said, since you caught him, you can deal with him. If you need someone to help you, you can find me at any time. With that, he waved his hand and threw Yongya Wuming to Suyu. Suyu supported his back and said with a smile, thank you, Grand Wizard. Under the leadership of the Grand Wizard, they walked forward 10,000 feet. The fog here was extremely thin, almost as if there was nothing there. Visible to the naked eye, there was a huge abyss pit on the ground, and hundreds of wizards were casting spells and digging to the bottom of the abyss. Suyu was led across the edge of the abyss and quietly glanced at the bottom of the abyss. His eyes flashed with a pale color, and he saw through the bottom of the abyss. After taking a look, Suyu was slightly surprised. Buried at the bottom of the abyss was a crystal ball with a diameter of 1,000,000 feet. The ball lay very calmly at the bottom of the abyss, but Suyu had the illusion of facing the World Annihilation Dragon, and his heart was anxious. Could this be the rumored creation-level civilization weapon buried in the depths of the sacred realm? So he took a breath. Although he knew that this thing would be extremely powerful, the breath it emitted was comparable to the World Annihilation Dragon. If it was activated, how powerful would it be? After a hurried glance, Suyu left and was led to a resting place. You can rest here and wait for the Holy Maiden to return. She will summon you as soon as possible, the Grand Wizard said. Suyu nodded and entered a temporary resting room that had been dug out. After entering the room and closing the stone door, Suyu flicked his finger, and a wisp of wizard power dissolved Yongya Wuming's spell. Regaining his freedom, Yongya Wuming opened his mouth and laughed loudly. He patted Suyu on the shoulder and said, you are really a talent. You managed to sneak into the Moonwatch sect. It would be a pity for a talent like you to work for Shangguan Feiyu. From now on, follow me, and I will ensure that you will have a good career and a high position. Suyu rolled his eyes. With an outstanding peer like Yongya Wuming, how much future could he have in the Empire of Darkness? What's more, Yongye Driang had a lifespan of tens of millions of years. During this period, many princes had been born, and they were not the only ones. Thank you very much. Suyu smiled faintly, and his eyes were full of thought. What else are you thinking about? Hurry up and use your identity to bring me closer to the stairs, and then take the opportunity to escape from the ruins. When a monster holy maiden comes back, you will be exposed. Yongye Wuming urged. Suyu shook his head solemnly. Don't worry, I am pretending to be the Holy Sun's man. As the Grand Wizard under the Holy Maiden, there is no reason for him not to be wary of me. If I am not mistaken, there are strong men secretly watching us. I am afraid that we will be captured on the spot before we can successfully climb the stairs. Yongye Wuming was surprised. He tried to explore secretly, and his heart tightened. As expected, he sensed a faintly discernible aura lingering nearby. What should we do? Once the Holy Maiden comes back, we will all be finished. Suyu looked calm. So we need to think about it carefully. You wait for me, and I'll be back soon. After saying that, Suyu disappeared on the spot, even hiding his breath. Yongye Wuming was taken aback. He found that he could not feel any breath from Suyu. The door of the secret chamber opened for a moment, then closed immediately, and there was no more sound. Somewhere outside the door, a wizard stared at the stone door and was surprised. Why do I feel something coming out? Chapter 1348. He had no intention of fighting for this thing. Obviously, this was something that he could not touch at the moment. Not to mention that there were hundreds of wizards present, whether Suyu could leave this place alive. Even if he escaped with this thing, once the slightest trace of this thing was exposed, Suyu's identity would be exposed, and he would be hunted down by the entire ancient god realm and the Moonwatch sect. At that time, Suyu would really have no way out. His current purpose was very simple. He wanted to create some chaos in this creation-level civilization weapon and attract the attention of the wizards. In this way, Suyu could successfully climb the stairs and teleport out of the ruins. Suyu quickly flew to the bottom of the abyss and looked at the huge crystal ball at close range. He felt the terrible power contained in the crystal ball. After a long moment of contemplation, Suyu opened his transparent eyes and looked into the crystal ball. Just for a moment, Suyu immediately retracted his gaze, his face showing a painful expression. His eyes were completely red, and there seemed to be flames burning faintly within them. This crystal ball, could it be? Suyu endured the pain and looked surprised. Suyu looked at the four walls of the abyss. After thinking for a long time, he took out a golden flames forbidden wood bead and shot it at the stone wall. Poof! The golden flames forbidden wood fell into the depths of the stone wall, smashing a deep hole. In the depths of the seemingly ordinary stone wall, there was an inexplicable movement. A sense of extreme danger surged into Suyu's heart. Suyu had no time to take back the golden flames forbidden wood bead. He decisively left the abyss and went straight to the top of the abyss. Almost as soon as his front foot left, a white cold mist suddenly shot out from the hole. The coldness of the cold mist was something Suyu had never seen before. The entire bottom of the abyss, except where the crystal ball was frozen into powder, including Suyu's golden flames forbidden wood bead. The amazing cold rushed from the bottom of the abyss straight to the sky. Everything along the way turned into ice. The hundreds of wizards who were digging were shocked and fled in a hurry. Crack! Crack! The cold rushed out of the abyss and continued to spread in all directions. The nearby wizards fled in all directions in horror, causing chaos. In the blink of an eye, the center of the sanctuary was covered with ice. If one looked from above the sanctuary, one could see that 1/10 of the area of the sanctuary had become a world of ice. What's going on? The great shaman was flustered and exasperated. Standing in the air, looking at the cold air that was still spreading, he roared and shouted. The fleeing sorcerers gathered together in fear. If they were any slower, they would have been frozen to death. Under the interrogation of the Grand Sorcerer, the hundreds of sorcerers told him what had happened in confusion, unable to grasp the main points. The Grand Wizard's expression was extremely gloomy. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and break the ice. If you delay the Holy Maiden's important matter, I'll teach you a lesson." Hundreds of wizards flew down and started digging the frozen abyss again. However, what troubled them was that the hardness of the ice was simply unimaginable. Even with the combined efforts of over 100 deities, they were only able to break through 1,000 feet of the ice. It would take at least a month to completely excavate it. There was less than a month left before the relic opened. Just as he was in a dilemma, a powerful aura suddenly descended nearby. A sweet-sounding and dignified voice floated over from the clouds. "Out of the way! Greetings, Saintus." The sorcerers retreated with mixed feelings. Chi. At that moment, a ripple visible to the naked eye penetrated the sky and landed on the earth. The entire sanctuary trembled fiercely, scattering the mist for hundreds of millions of miles. Countless lost people who coveted it fled in panic. The frozen ice was cracked layer by layer. Under the ripple, it shattered into ice chips, then melted into water vapor and dissipated into nothingness. In an instant, all the ice was swept away. Suyu was secretly shocked. Such a terrible blow was comparable to that of the first prince of the demon dimension. No, it was even more terrible than the first prince. Suddenly, Suyu noticed the gaze cast from the sky and immediately fled to the resting room. He immediately cast the divine path of camouflage and transformed into the appearance of Gang Daily Eye. The gaze seemed to have noticed something. It glanced at the resting room, where Suyu was, and retracted indifferently. Swish, white clouds gathered in the sky, forming a rotating vortex. In the vortex, the figure of a 15 or 16-year-old girl stepped on the white clouds, like a fairy descending. The girl's eyes were big, half innocent and half deep. Under the worship of many wizards, she slowly floated down. The girl landed, her eyes staring at the bottom of the abyss. She raised her hand, and some golden powder fell into her palm. Golden flames, forbidden wood? The girl's bright eyes flickered slightly. So, the ancient tomb of the Kylan divine warrior in the ancient god realm has been found by them. She grasped with one hand, and the golden powder turned into smoke in her small palm. Her crystal-like eyes flickered slightly. The holy maiden stared at the wizards below with a dignified expression. "I have only been away for half a month, and such an accident has happened. You have really disappointed me." Shaking her head, the holy maiden sighed secretly. "The Moonwatch sect is so big, but there is no one who can be used." Many wizards begged for mercy. "Please have mercy, holy maiden." I don't know why, but another crystal ball leaked cold air. The holy maiden waved her hand. "Forget it." As she spoke, she threw out 2 cold bodies. They were the 2 super strong men who guarded the imperial sacred faction of eternal darkness, level 3 deities. But now they had turned into corpses lying straight on the ground. "Take care of them. Extract their divine blood and refine their souls," the holy maiden instructed calmly. The grand wizard hurriedly caught the bodies and said, "Congratulations, holy maiden, for achieving great success in the heaven witchcraft art. You have killed 2 people of the same level." "I only know a little about the heaven witchcraft art. It is far from great success," the holy maiden said. "Moreover, there are unimaginable strong men in the ancient god realm." The son of the imperial sacred faction, Yongya Wuheng, comprehended the essence of the combat skills left by an emperor, but it was not pure enough. Even so, he was able to block my attack and escape from my hands. Hearing this, the Grand Wizard did not take it seriously. Suddenly, he remembered something and said, "Holy Maiden, there is great news." "Oh, good news? Do you mean the other crystal ball was disturbed?" The Holy Maiden said calmly. The Grand Wizard said awkwardly, "It is the Holy Sun. The people he sent messed up the Myriad Bone Mountain mission." The Holy Maiden looked calm. "How do you know?" The Grand Sorcerer said, "Wu Tong sent a sorcerer named Black Mountain to report this." "Black Mountain?" The Holy Maiden's eyes flashed. "Where is he?" "In the lounge." The Grand Wizard smiled and pointed to the lounge. The Holy Maiden's big eyes darkened. She said calmly, "Catch him. Holy Maiden, he is the first prince's man, after all." The Grand Wizard hesitated. Chapter 1349. Oh, if he is Heishan, who is the missing Heishan? The Holy Maiden blinked and smiled lightly. If I hadn't happened to go to the Devil Realm, I wouldn't have suspected that someone would deceive me. After hearing the whole story, the Grand Wizard was shocked and deeply frightened. He shouted angrily, "Get him out!" Swish! Dozens of sorcerers immediately surrounded the lounge. Yongye Wuming's face was ashen. At the most critical moment, the Holy Maiden had returned. Clenching his teeth, Yongye Wuming knew that he would not be able to escape death. Instead, he became more courageous and shouted, "Death can be as heavy as Mount Tai, or as light as a feather. I, Yongye Wuming, will die without regrets for the dynasty." Looking back, Yongye Wuming fixed his eyes on Suyu. "Boy, are you willing to follow me and kill our way out?" Suyu smiled. Although this person had the air of a spoiled brat, he was not a coward at the critical moment. "Of course," Suyu said in the form of Gang Daily Eye. Yongye Wuming laughed and patted Suyu on the shoulder. "You are indeed the one I have chosen. Good. I will go all out later and try to kill the god-level wizard. I have no strength left to protect you, so you have to take care of yourself." Suyu smiled lightly. "I will be careful." "Ha ha ha." Yongye Wuming laughed and kicked open the door of the lounge. "Bastards of the Moonwatch sect, if you have the guts, fight me one-on-one." What greeted him were tens of ripples. Ah, where's the one-on-one fight? Yongye Wuming was hit by dozens of sorcery. His whole body was petrified, and only his eyes could move. The wizards looked at each other. Is there something wrong with this prince? Why does he want to fight one-on-one? Yes, yes. Do you think we are fools? Oh, the taste of a group of people fighting one-on-one is so wonderful. The Grand Wizard's face was sullen. It's not him. Hundreds of wizards stared at the secret room again, and countless ripples swept down. The lounge was instantly obliterated and turned into ruins. In the ruins, the figure of a black divine dragon was entrenched. Looking at this dragon, the wizards were stunned. The Grand Wizard's eyes flashed. "Is your original body a demon dragon?" Roar. What answered them was a dragon's roar, followed by a dark aura that filled the sky from the black dragon's nostrils. Endless dragon's breath. Wherever the dragon breath passed, the group of wizards would flee in fright. A warlock's body was much weaker than a deity realm powerhouse's. If they didn't have any defense, they would surely be killed by the dragon breath on the spot. After sweeping away the wizards, Suyu transformed into his demon-headed human form and stared coldly at the crowd. The Grand Shaman's expression was dark as he hollered, "How dare you pretend to be the Holy Sun's man and deceive us?" "That's because you're stupid," Suyu said expressionlessly. In order to atone for his crime, the Grand Shaman said, "All of you, move aside. I will personally capture this thief." After saying that, the Grand Wizard recited an obscure incantation, and a tyrannical wave headed straight for Suyu. Soul-binding curse. The formless ripples headed straight for Suyu and tightly wrapped around him. Suyu smiled apathetically. He pinched a feather covered in ice and frost between his two fingers and gently waved it. A gust of strange cold wind suddenly descended. The intensity of the cold wind forcefully dispersed the great shaman's incantation waves. The Grand Wizard was slightly surprised and did not hesitate to offer another spell. Wind freezing curse. As the spell passed, the gale set off in the sky was naturally extinguished, and the divine feather of frost fell silently. The Grand Wizard's eyes were sharp. God-killing curse. This was a dangerous witchcraft that could shock and kill the gods. Suyu's face was calm. The moment he recited the spell, he raised one hand, and two purple golden rings crossed the void and bombarded the ripples, breaking them apart. At the same time, the two purple golden rings combined in the air and turned into a Tai Chi pattern, trapping the Grand Wizard in an instant. He couldn't react in time and was trapped by the combined yin-yang rings. Titan. Immediately afterward, Suyu's hands formed a seal, and the yin-yang purple gold rings immediately tightened. The wizard power condensed on the surface of the Grand Wizard's body frantically resisted, but could do nothing against the gradually shrinking yin-yang purple gold rings. They quickly pressed down on his body, and his body was about to be crushed into flesh and blood. At this moment, the holy maiden, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, finally made a move. She said lightly, "Enough." It was just a casual shout, but there was a tyrannical, almost substantial ripple sweeping through. Buzz, buzz. When the yin-yang purple gold rings were swept by the ripple, they suddenly trembled and bounced off the surface of the Grand Wizard's body. Suyu was quick to react. Before it could fly towards the holy maiden, he grabbed it back. Looking at the calm face of the holy maiden, Suyu was secretly shocked. The strength of this woman was too terrifying. At this moment, Suyu looked at her face, and when he fixed his eyes on her, he couldn't help but be surprised. Wasn't this so-called holy maiden the seemingly innocent girl who accompanied Kalen in that attic? She was actually the holy maiden of the Moonwatch sect. Do you know me? The holy maiden's bright eyes were extremely sharp, and she captured the moment when Suyu looked at her. Suyu did not respond, but his mind was racing, thinking about the overall situation. Not receiving an answer, the holy maiden frowned slightly. The Grand Wizard was subdued by Suyu, and he lost all face. He shouted angrily, "How dare you? Come on, recite the spell together." However, the holy maiden waved her hand and said lightly, "Stand down." After all, he can defeat the princess of the Xuen nation in the Northern Territory and take away her Emperor-based Saint artifact and the divine feather of frost. You can't do anything to him. The Grand Wizard was taken aback. The purple gold rings that bound him just now were ranked 70th among the Emperor-based Saint artifacts, the famous purple gold rings of Yin-Yang. The divine feather of frost was also ranked 100 among the Emperor-based Saint artifacts. The holy maiden took a step towards Suyu. Suddenly, the world roared, and the surrounding spiritual energy seemed to be squeezed crazily in all directions, forming a terrible storm that raised a lot of dust on the ground. Suyu's heart tightened, and he felt a strong pressure. At this moment, Suyu felt it more clearly. In terms of breath, the holy maiden was above the first prince of the demon realm, second only to the demonic god of six paths. However, the more dangerous the situation Suyu was in, the calmer he became. His eyes flashed, and Suyu rushed towards the stairs, taking away the Prince Yongyawuming. The holy maiden suddenly understood. It turns out that the person who pretended to be the Holy Sun wanted to escape from the ruins through the exit of this place. That was his purpose. Unfortunately, he was reckless after all. The Holy Sun's people can block the exit, but can I? The holy maiden smiled leisurely. Near the exit, there were 3 grand sorcerer-level powerhouses hidden, and they had even cast a spell on them. Even a level 3 deity might not be able to leave in a short time. Moreover, Suyu was just seeking his own death. However, the next moment, she was slightly stunned. Just as Suyu was approaching the exit of the stairs, he took a detour and went straight to the deepest part of the Saint realm. Coming back to her senses, the holy maiden frowned slightly. What does he want to do? Hide in the depths of the Saint realm? Gently shaking her head, the holy maiden made a seal with one hand, and a majestic wave came out of her mouth, sweeping across half of the Saint realm in an instant. Near worlds apart curse. With a thought, the figure of the holy maiden was everywhere like a wave, and the figure of the holy maiden was everywhere. When a wave swept past Suyu, all the figures disappeared at the same time into starlight, condensing into a figure in front of Suyu. With a playful and cold smile, the holy maiden said lightly, "Do you think you can escape from my hands?" As she spoke, she pointed a finger at Suyu's eyebrows. It was obviously a seemingly casual finger, but at this moment, Suyu had an illusion that although the world was vast, there was no place to hide. No matter how Suyu dodged, he had to bear this blow. In the face of such an absolute strong attack, Suyu could not avoid it. I can only try that move. Suyu gritted his teeth, and a vast picture quickly echoed in his mind. On the boundless earth, a great figure stood alone. He looked up at the sky, and his eyes were filled with a fierce fighting spirit. The sky, at this moment, was rumbling and pressing down, with the power to crush everything in the world. The indifferent face of the holy maiden suddenly froze, and her face suddenly changed. This is Yongye Wuheng's move. No, it is even purer than Yongye Wuheng's. As soon as her voice fell, Su Yu's eyes suddenly shot out a towering fighting spirit, like a towering ancient mountain. His mouth reverberated with an ancient voice that shook time and space and spread throughout the universe. The heavens are not destroyed. The heavens will not die. Heaven trampling 3 steps. The first step shattered the sky. The second step fell the green abyss. The third step turned the world upside down. With just 3 steps, it was as if he had trampled the sky and shattered the endless sky. Su Yu's black hair flew, and his eyes were bright. In the sky, he fought alone with the supreme heavens. The fighting spirit that could destroy everything turned into a mysterious power of chaos and broke out. Swish! The holy maiden hurriedly retracted her finger, and her beautiful figure flashed, retreating thousands of miles, narrowly avoiding the mysterious power that broke out. She looked down at her finger. Although she retracted in time, it was still brittle and shattered into pieces. The gray fog flashed, and the finger was restored. However, it was immediately broken into pieces. After thousands of repairs, the residual power of chaos was finally offset. The holy maiden's face was full of shock. As expected, just like Yongye Wuheng, he has comprehended the essence of the heaven-fighting divine warrior's combat skills. However, compared with him, what Yongye Wuheng has learned is just the tip of the iceberg. She raised her face again and stared at Su Yu with a murderous look. The Moonwatch sect has been dormant for hundreds of millions of years. I didn't know that today's ancient god realm has so many geniuses, and even such a proud creature has appeared. This person can't be left alive. The holy maiden looked solemn and stared at Su Yu coldly. After using the heaven-trampling 3 steps once, Su Yu was seriously overdrawn, and his body was extremely empty and deficient. Even his camouflage revealed fluctuations and could not be completely maintained. The holy maiden flew over and stood 10 feet away from Su Yu. She said regretfully, "You are a rare genius, but it is a pity that you were born in the enemy's territory. It is a pity that I have to erase your existence." Unexpectedly, Su Yu, who was completely defenseless, revealed a faint smile at the corners of his mouth. "I think that before erasing my existence, you should save your clansmen first." After saying that, Su Yu said softly, "Explode." The holy maiden raised her eyebrows and suddenly realized something. 8 consecutive thunder-like roars came from the abyss. Suddenly, a horrible chill rushed out of the abyss and swept across the entire Saint realm. The holy maiden was shocked and angry. "You did it." The first time the power of ice in the abyss accidentally leaked, she found traces of the golden flames forbidden wood. Now that she thought about it, it was Su Yu's doing. In addition to triggering the leakage of the power of ice, he also put in 8 additional golden flames forbidden wood beads, waiting for this moment. Between the hundreds of people and Su Yu, who would the holy maiden choose? If she hesitated now, hundreds of wizards would be frozen to death. Even the great wizards would die without any suspense. Gritting her silver teeth, the holy maiden shouted angrily, "You are so cruel." The previous resistance and escape were all pretense. The purpose was to lead the holy maiden away from the abyss. Otherwise, the holy maiden could have stopped the golden flames forbidden wood before it exploded. Now, it was too late for her to stop it. Now, there was a dilemma in front of her. She could either go back to rescue them immediately or give up on her people and deal with Su Yu. There was no time to hesitate. The holy maiden did not even have time to kill Su Yu, who was close at hand. She turned back to the abyss and cast a powerful spell to resist the crazy outbreak of the power of ice. Compared to the power of ice that had leaked before, it was 8 times stronger now. Even the saintess found it extremely strenuous. While blocking the ice, she shouted, "Retreat!" Swish! All the wizards frantically fled the center of the Saint realm and collectively fled to the Devil realm. The holy maiden protected them as they retreated while blocking the ice. In this way, they retreated until they reached the edge of the Saint Realm. The power of ice was finally consumed. However, the destructive power caused by the power of ice was amazing. Looking from above, the Saint Realm that had existed for thousands of years had turned into a land of eternal ice. All the mist, including the lost people in the mist, were frozen forever. The entire Saint Realm had become a giant ice cube. There was only one passage opened by the Holy Maiden all the way to the center of the Saint Realm. At this point, everything in the Saint Realm had fallen into ice, including the transmission portal. The sorcerers' faces were pale, and fear lingered in their hearts. The Holy Maiden clenched her fists, and her innocent face was full of annoyance. Her mission had also failed. Moreover, she had been defeated by a nobody who, in her opinion, could be easily wiped out. At this moment, the Holy Maiden suddenly looked somewhere in the Saint Realm. She saw a gray flame burning there. The flame made the Holy Maiden's expression instantly grave. She shouted, "Be careful! Something is coming out of the Saint Realm." As soon as her voice fell, a black-clothed young man walked out of the flame with his hands behind his back. His face was indifferent, and he stepped on the gray flame as if nothing had happened. Behind him, there were 3 deities at the level of the tribe leader. The black-clothed young man looked straight ahead and brushed past the saintess. He glanced at her from the corner of his eyes and revealed a look of pity. What a group of pitiful creatures. They don't even know what faith is. After saying that, he led the 3 deities towards the center of the Devil Realm. The Holy Maiden didn't dare to make a move. Her intuition told her that this black-clothed young man was very horrible, and she couldn't afford to provoke him. Moreover, his words of pity made the Holy Maiden fall into deep thought. Unable to understand, the Holy Maiden glanced in the direction of the center of the Devil Realm. Her eyes were burning with anger. What a creature of the ancient God Realm! I didn't expect you to escape to the center of the Devil Realm in an instant. You ruined the Holy Sun's mission, and now you ruin my mission. Are you sent by God to fight against the Moonwatch sect? A deep murderous look flashed in the Holy Maiden's eyes. Her beautiful figure flashed and rushed in the direction of the Devil Realm. The black-clothed young man and the Holy Maiden, 2 powerful enemies, were chasing Su Yu together. A great crisis was hanging over Su Yu's head.